sheets that I handed out, and I tried to work through this, trying to find a way that was easier. And the second part of the sheet was actually from a suggestion from Helen for making it longer, because I was just going to give you 2 copies of this and then, put the 10 groups and try and look at it. It's just easier to tape on another page. Just basically gone through and taken the scripture and just divided it so it's easier to mark and highlight. I'm going to give a suggested way of going through it to make it easier, and I found it quite easy once it was like this. Didn't have to rewrite it all the time. It was then easy to compare each one, and this is the whole idea of it, is to go through analyze, and then simplify, and then group, generally, then compare all the methods. And you can see when the lines go across, that's where the groupings are, that pretty well agrees with each one. This is a section, this is a train of thought, this is a train of thought. As it continues, you'll find when you make a summary, when we interpret and then summarize the whole thing, it makes it much easier to look at. You don't lose your information, it doesn't get lost by being scattered from page to page. So do this for your other ones. It's going to be assigned for tomorrow. Continue this, and I would suggest, I gave you the pages, maybe make another photocopy for yourself if you want, just to keep one unadulterated copy, right? The other one to work on, and maybe when you have time, go back over the first couple chapters, because we'll be highlighting like this, and it'll make it much easier, and it's good for your record. You've gone through to have it with you. It makes it a lot easier. So just to highlight on here what to do, just markings that I've used, I've tried to find a book. I know there's universal markings that are recognized for parsing or showing parts of speech for grammar. And I asked my wife, who took English and everything at university, she could remember a few, and I couldn't find any literature on it. So the ones you remember, plus the other ones I just found, we want to keep it simple. We don't want to identify, our object at this point isn't to identify every part of speech and every relationship between each part of it. It's just to basically group it, separate, so we can see what is the main part for emphasis. And then when we go through later with exegesis, then we'll actually look at each part. So the way I did it on here, and if I can show you later, we'll actually do an example when we go through, so we can all see together. I put it just like, I just switched one of the titles, as I mentioned before. Remember, the way to think of it is who, what, where, when, why, history, then grammatical, logical, textual, contextual, proportional. That's basically how I put it on the chart, except I put grammatical first. That's usually a primary way of analyzing your portion of text. Grammatical. Then I looked at who, biographical, what, topical, where, geographical, when, chronological, historical, and then logical, textual, contextual, proportional, leaving a section for summary. You can do it any way you want if you're comfortable. And just for how I separated it, I just took a piece of lined paper, and they're just, the other ones are 5 lines. I found the word. Then where it gives you an example. Yeah. So, actually this one's a little more accurate. With 5, looks more even. And I'm going through what I did with the text, first because I did each one in order. I did grammatical first. And the steps that I used, I used pencil for grammatical, and I used black marker for other ones, and blue and red. Pretty primary colors. Yeah, that's the differentiate, and I'll show you what I did for each one. So grammatical, what I did was, and then later on, just to help me, I know grammatical's in pencil, but the rest I actually put the sign it represents right beside it. So I don't have to keep saying, okay, what is it, what is it? Grammatical in pencil, I put the subject, underline it, just one line under the word. Right? The verb, it's a good word. 2 lines. And then the object, now this is where I couldn't find the rule. I don't know if that 3 lines or whatever. All I did is a squiggly line underneath for the object. You can do anything you want. This is just a suggestion, and later you can develop it.
Well, we'll just use all this stuff. It'll just be easier if we all use the same thing.
Yeah, it would be for marketing stuff, but it'll help you. It goes quickly, then you can identify it. The conjunctions or connectives, I usually went like that. I tried underneath it, but it gets lost with these, you get confused. So if you had and, I'd go like this, or therefore, I just remember generally grouped it. So I show it, it's just an addition. For any kind of preposition, or anything that is kind of subordinate, I just want to get away so I can identify and isolate the main subject verb object. I just did it the other way, like that. And that's it. Oh, sorry, it's not it. One other thing I put, adverbs were square brackets. If you want to get this, I found I didn't use this too much for the adverbs. Adjectives, just like that. Something defining. So the high priest, the great high priest, great would be in here. Okay? And that was just basic. And just using those. These later on, you'll end up marking with pen and stuff because of how they fit into the other things, whether it's contextual or logical or biographical or whatever. They'll later on fit in. So that's works good enough. Gosh, that's, I want to pass that around. You just want a closer view. The other thing then, so grammatical was the first one, and biographical was my next one. And what you'll see on the chart, and what we'll do on the overhead, is after I simplified it, then I just went through the whole part of the observation at first is not to get bogged down with just the details. Because I noticed like some of the sheets, you did the first part, which is good, observe what's there, note what's there, then finally say, okay, this is the key one. So, then you would say everything else, like he threw the ball, and then I'll be talking about, and the ball was red, and the ball was this and that and this, but the main idea then you would want to group, or he threw the ball, and then you want to finally see where a certain thought goes in, just by writing out he threw the ball, and then the next thought, he caught the ball, and then whatever, so you can kind of group it and see this is a train of thought. Biographical, all I did for that is, now again you can change it however you want, but what I did is I used blue and I just circled words. So when it's he or Moses, I used blue and I circled it. Our, circled it. But that is over in the text and it stays there, then later you group it. This whole section talking about Moses. And that's all you want to see, you just want to simplify it. Then, geographical, what I use is, no, I got a wrong word on the page. Biographical, topical. I have a circle and it's a red circle. Red circle. And again, you follow your sheets and your notes. You can do anything that are repeating. It can be mostly nouns, but sometimes it can be verbs when it's a certain idea. As if you notice in chapter 3, enter, 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 It gives us a certain idea, but it's just circled in red. Trying to see what the topic is. Who, what, where. Geographical. I just put a blue box. All I try to do is keep the three primary colors, or two primary and black. Try to keep the three colors and circle and square. It's easy to identify. And again, geographical, whether it's in the sphere or something like that, in something, or in a specific place, Jerusalem or whatever, you just kind of square it, and then you'll go through. Well, we'll do an example on the overhead of what I'm talking about. But things that are geographical. Who, what, where, when? Chronological. And for that I put, it's a black square. Then continuing on, but I just, for shortness of space, have to rub it off. Historical. That's where you're looking for certain events or customs or things like that. Even though this is very close sometimes to chronological, or sometimes topical, it's looking at for a certain historical event. And a lot of times it'll make a reference, the foundations of the earth. When was that? And when did that happen? Or God spake. Well, when was that? Was it recorded? These are more questions that you ask, but it kind of maybe shows a division. When especially dealt with, notice the one chart, it just had to generally interpret it all dealt with the wilderness, for the example, in chapter 3. And it was historical. I just put it as a black circle. It's pretty similar to chronological, historical. Black circle, black square.
The problem with that though is when it's like a big, sometimes an event takes 3 or 4 verses. Go 3 or 4 verses just talking about an event.
Right. Well, that's the same as when we get to. I did this for specific, but you still have to then interpret too. Yeah. You're not going to be able to circle the whole passage. This is for specific words to give a time reference. When, now, or up here, sorry. But here would be something when it said like the foundation of the earth, or he did rest.
Majesty
That's kind of an
on
idea.
high.
What's that?
What would majesty be on high be? Would that fall under that too then?
Oh, the event would, yeah, where he sat. The idea where he sat down.
So that's almost, this is like chronological almost.
It almost is, except this one you're asking more questions.
Yeah, it's talking about an event in history.
Right.
It's not just telling a story.
And sometimes I started thinking about, even though we have it as historical, some events in the future, like you could put the kind of, with certain events rather than just chronology and time progression of thought. They're very close. Very close. But you may see like this one, you would have it talked about certain things. This one specifically, you get the whole event as a wilderness. You see it's talking about a certain thing right through chapter 3. It's talking about the wilderness experience, something in all these verses relate to it. Yeah, whereas chronology, when he actually spoke or a certain time, you're pinpointing it more. That's a good distinction anyways. Historical, and then you have logical. And you probably found, at least I did, when doing this one in your grammatical, logical grammatical, this really helps. Now, this means more than just trying to think through the author's train of thought. I noticed that in some of your papers. This, words like therefore. And what I used for this was a red square. So I'd have in the text therefore, and anything less, I think it shows logic. Less means a negative consequence. Or, but, even though this repeats in other methods, okay, they kind of overlap. But this for showing, and like, you get to know it after, but I'd say explanation or contrast. See, this is all showing a thought, and you're gonna have to think it through. You have to see, therefore, he makes a statement, right? And then here, concluding statement, but this is explaining that statement. Less, so you don't want negatives out. But you're seeing it's not equal to this. It's not a new statement. It's all modifying this first statement. All coming back to the therefore. For, in a reason, giving a contrast. And finally, maybe so. So that's just an example. Logical. Now textual, these other ones I had no signs for because it just takes going through and saying. You could probably make up a sign later on if you want to get into different colors or different symbols or whatever. Textual, you could look for things where you look for what's missing, what's not there, or what's there. Like what's there is if you had said, saith, well, it's talking about some kind of dialogue or narration or something about when someone was talking. Whereas if these words aren't there, it's more most likely just teaching or something the person's going through. But I didn't highlight anything. I just, as I went through the text, we don't have too many divisions. Again, I can't find a book to list all the different ways you can. I know some of them, there's poetry and prose and all the different types of literature. But our main one, especially for this one, is didactic or teaching, narrative.
What part would you put like for finding? Do we go through and gotta find the conflicts in that? Something like when we were in school or something? Like.
Okay, that's contextual. That's the next one. This one just deals with. Now these deal more with the text itself. Okay, on a whole, and you're not going to necessarily evaluate every single verse. You're going to say, okay, you're going to just look at it and say, well, these ones, this is teaching. Oh, this one, this is maybe historical narrative. Because you know it's all talking about the wilderness. And you can see, well, this is back to teaching again, or didactic. Right? That's it, just general. Just what this helps is when you, this is the whole purpose of going through these, is to simplify it and then group it. Generally group it. And if you get lost in all the little things and doodads and they stay on your page, you get confused, it's not helping. Then, as you'll see in the pages went around, you start seeing where these lines, they all kind of agree, that there's certain divisions because of certain reasons, because the topic changes and the logic of it is finished and it starts a new point, and you'll find, well, this is why. You know why, you're not just guessing that this is a division, you know why it's a division. And that's why you're thinking through the train of thought. So textual, we're in our room here. Contextual, these ones that get more, as it gets farther out, I'm getting harder time with them. They're easier when they're like this. Contextual, this is basically contrast. Whether it's contrast saying the word like but, okay, it's another, it kind of overlaps, but, or sometimes a contrast because of showing comparison, a more excellent, you know, basically the term, this guy's more excellent than the other guy, well, they're showing a contrast. Sometimes, just like we'll see in chapter 3, where it compares, just doing a comparison of any type, it says, well, these guys are both faithful. That's a similarity, right? He's faithful, but here's Moses, and he's faithful in his house, and he's faithful as a servant. Well, here's Jesus, he's faithful over his house, right? Showing greater degree, and he's faithful as a son. Now, in a house, what's a servant? Or a household, especially in those days. In a household, what was the son? What privileges? They're showing a contrast, and again, the idea of words. He has more honor, more glory, and this is contextual. You're getting to see a contrast coming out all the time, kind of things to look for. And the last one, which I think is the hardest one for me, proportional, because the way I think of it, you can look at cause and effect. You can look at, well, you got a starting statement here, and it like a therefore statement. You have this here, and then final conclusion. Or you're given a cause for something, which they kind of mentioned, right? Unbelief, not entering, and the effect or result. Another way of proportional sometimes, on a greater extent, rather than just a small portion of scripture. That's why I don't think it's as helpful when you're looking at smaller portions, is when you look out on a whole. Like an example, Genesis, you know, you're basically going like Genesis 1 to what, 6, 9. And what you got covered is like so many thousand year, about almost we can go up to 11. You got 4,000 years covered. And then 12 to, right to the end of the book, 50, you actually have about, I guess, 350 years. So proportionally, what was given room in Scripture to cover certain events compared to another one shows the importance. This event's more important. Or like in the Gospels, you have, like, you could probably combine it all together to about 2 or 3 chapters out of a total of about 100, all dealing with the first 30 years of the Lord's birth and growing up. And then you have another 30 or so chapters given to his ministry, but then you have this, or 50 or so, then you have 30 chapters given to the last 7 days. So by proportion, what is showing to be more important? So on a larger scale, this is where it's important. Smaller, it's a little bit harder to see, but you could say, well, it gives one statement here, a load of consequence, but here it gives a whole statement giving an example. The wilderness. Another statement.
So to sum it up, what would you say we're looking for in that one then?
Well, there's a bunch of things. There's climax, anticlimax. They're trying to show a progression, right? Here this passage comes right to a climax of a therefore statement and result. So it's like proportioning, this is how it's building and goes down. Or general versus specific at proportion. Because we're talking about general principles here, but a specific example. Right? Or cause and effect. You know, something is going to happen, and this is the effect when you do this. Personal, impersonal. These are general, just trying to show things that show a difference and how much room they're given is proportion. Collective versus individual. Us, and then finally, you know, ye or you do this, you do this, you do this. Negative versus positive. But this is basically the change in emphasis. But not all of them are always going to work on every passage. Like they're not going to get a lot of stuff from it. But usually you get quite a bit from logical, your grammatical, and of course your topical. You know, they all kind of go together. Any questions? We're going to look on it in the overhead. And we're going to try a passage and see what you have. So I suggest you try using these pages, and you'll see as we do it, it's really easy once you get going. You're not duplicating your work.
Really easy or
really
easier?
Easier. Really easy when not to do, I guess.
Do we have to photocopy them when we're done with them? Still hand them in?
Yeah, I want you to hand them in, so if you get them back, like for an example today, well, I don't know, maybe we could make it where you keep them for the class, but I want you to keep them the way you had them, and then because you'll be probably making notes or side notes to it and stuff, so. What we'll do is look at my pages back, please.
I would want to photocopy them. Since I didn't take all these notes that everybody else did. Would that be okay?
I don't know.
Well, I'm not taking this for credit.
And another one?
Scott,
I have it.
not giving it up.
These are washable? Non-permanent, okay. Can you all read that?
No.
Well,
But I have to later on the page.
Okay. So quickly going through it, and then after, as we progress through the course, we won't go through it so much, as we're going to just group it together to see we have the same conclusions, or to see what you might have gleaned that I did, vice versa.
the gleaners.
just going through this, see if you grasp some of that I was mentioning before. I don't have all the colors here that you have there, but the idea. Looking at the first verse, chapter 3, verse 1, we're going to do it grammatically. So I'm going to point you out one at a time to go through one verse. Just point the stuff out. The others can help if you get stuck. This way we can go through it. So Tracy, wherefore?
Are we doing it like what we did before?
No,
What do you
just
want?
grammatical first. Analyze it word for word for grammatical.
No, but I meant the way we did it on the board.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so we did the conjunction thing there
Okay,
first.
just like that.
Am I doing the whole first verse?
Yeah.
Holy brethren, I don't know. I could be subject.
Okay. So, well, this here, just kind of modifying it. It says brethren.
Okay.
Okay, subject.
Partakers. Yeah, I had a hard time with the first three words.
Yeah.
First words because it's there's no verb or anything. So.
Yeah, this is kind of like this. Like that.
And then I have the holy callings of phrase.
Right. No, whether this is correct or not, but this is the way I did it. Brethren, the partakers of the hymn of calling is modifying brethren, and it's the same thing. Wherefore brethren, wherefore partakers.
You can always say it, you can say it both things, it's subject.
Yeah, but it's more modifying. You want to simplify it, so we'll just take brethren. You could stop there. There's brethren, and then the verb, or partakers, and the verb. Okay.
Sorry. Considers the verb.
Okay. So 2 lines.
The apostle is the object. And high priest is the object.
Okay. Connective, and high is kind of an adjective, but I put it underneath the squiggly.
Our profession is a prepositional phrase. And Christ Jesus is subject to it.
Yeah. So now, what you'd want to do, grammatically, you just want to group it, okay? What's the main, and we'll just really simplify, what's the main subject, verb, object?
Consider.
No, subject first.
Oh, subject. Holy brethren.
Just, okay, we'll just keep it simple, brethren.
Brethren, consider
Okay.
the apostle and high priest.
Right. The apostle, you get the idea, the priest, and Christ Jesus. So brethren, consider the apostle. Brethren, consider, brethren, consider the priest. Brethren, consider Christ Jesus. Okay? Now, I'm going to need a little.
What do you need?
Thanks. Okay, continue on. That was good. Number 2, Amy. Who?
I'd say that would be a subject.
Okay. Who?
Was faithful would be verb.
It's 2 lines. You know, bro, do you get stuck?
It can be indirect object.
Yeah, that's what I put it as. Even though we would put it out as prepositional phrasing, I put it as indirect object. Just put it as the object. Keep it simple. Point to him.
It's clause.
Yeah.
Wait, so do you
I-
put it with the phrase?
What's that?
What? Was?
Yeah. What I just use that.
So
Just
that's
need to
conjunction.
understand. Like this.
Oh, and you can use the phrase.
Yeah. Just trying to identify, the main subject, verb, object. Other stuff's going to be identified later, what the other means.
As also with the connection or
part in conjunction.
Like this. Maybe that's something different. Okay.
And then it looks like Moses would be the subject again.
This is what they call like a compound sentence.
Was faithful and superb. House would be the object, so in all his would be conditional.
Just prepositional phrase. His house. Now what I'd recommend too is when you go through this, do one method at a time. Even though you can see obvious other ones, just do straight grammatical. Then when it comes up to the biographical, just do straight biographical. Right? It's just easier. Because you want to summarize. Right. Okay. Colin, do you want to give a stab at it? You want to try?
I don't really want to.
If I can do it, you can do it.
No, I don't remember all this stuff.
Because remember, all you have to remember for this method is you just want to identify subject, verb, object, the conjunction or anything that connects it, and then anything else is just like preposition or clausal, whatever, just
Well,
those main forms.
we'll pretend that we know what we're doing.
Okay.
This man is a subject.
Okay. Modify. What's it for? Not exactly what is it, but what kind of marker are we going to give it?
Conjunction.
Yeah. We'll identify it later. Okay?
Was counted as the verb.
Those two moments. This comes as a quick one. Now, worthy, that's an adverb, isn't it? An adverb.
I think up here is probably just part of the verb.
What's that?
This is probably just part of the verb, I think, here.
So it's an adverb then, right? Or square. Okay, of more.
Prepositional phrase.
To that.
Glory would be an object. And no. Okay, then Moses got to be a phrase too.
Can't you make no one first?
Yeah, you can.
In as much, it's got to be conjunctive.
Okay. That's the other as much as.
That's what I can think of.
Yep.
And let's see, we got. Okay, he is the subject. Hath builded is the verb. The house is the object. Wait a second, oh, wait a second. He built a platform on it.
This one's just a little bit harder. The who is modifying he. He who.
Built the house.
Right, so that's who the he is. So he connects to the one right after that statement.
He hath more honor. Okay, so hath more honor is the verb.
Isn't honor an object?
Yeah.
Hath is the thing, and more is just adjective, and honor would be the object.
Do not have that.
last is just the phrase. And the house. Okay. Chris, you want to give a stab at the next one?
I don't think I can.
Oh, you did pretty good that last part. Okay. Well, Ellie?
House would be the subject. Everybody's an adjective. Or would be one of those
Junctions.
phrases, yeah. And is built as the verb. Man is the object, but yeah, no, yeah. No, actually that's wrong, eh? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. How can man be the object of?
It's not, I think it's showing
It has to be something else.
community agency or
Bond.
something.
By whom though? So it was
Built. We're used to using build it for every house is built.
What would a whom use that?
Where you got a whom?
Isn't it? Built by whom? So
Well, the by is connected to it, so let's
it's
say
like a phrase.
yeah, prepositional phrase. Just put it as that.
You circle it then?
What's that? See, not all the time do the verbs need an object.
Yeah.
I was just reading up on that last night. Transitive and intransitive verbs.
That's what I was looking for.
What's that?
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. And I think it's transitive verbs. They don't need an object. And this is like built.
Is
They
for
also built.
another conjunction again, or would it be?
Where do you get for? Room verse 4.
That's the beginning of the
Okay, so but.
That's that conjunction, isn't it?
Yeah. Connective word.
He is the subject. That is that's part of a phrase again, eh? That built all
Yeah.
things. Built is a verb, all things is a object. But that's all in one phrase. And then is the verb, and God is the object.
Right. So just for an example, and we forgot to do the other two, but what's the main subject, verb, and object?
House and built, and then he built, and then God.
Well, that's not even built really.
He's not.
Kind of idea. Right? Your home range.
Don't focus on it.
Okay, and what was verse 3?
What's by something?
If you were to summarize verse 3.
And was counted worthy.
Yeah. Man was counted worthy.
This man, like it's referring to something else.
What's that?
This man,
Yeah.
Jesus.
This man was counted worthy is the main thing. And he hath more honor. So that's the main idea. Is you take off all the things that are modifying and adding to it. That's the main idea. But going back to verse 3, we're just summarizing it. Because that's what you want to do. This is not enough. This is only the first stage.
Right, okay.
Right? Then you have to decide. That's what you want to do. You want to see what's the main thing. Now, in that, it takes some thinking. When you're going to group it, it takes just a little bit of thinking through it. What is modifying what? What's the main statement? What's everything else modifying it? Because the main statement was, brethren. I mean, you can modify with holy and all that, but brethren, consider the apostle, consider the priest, consider Christ Jesus. Right? Who? And what's that modifying? Usually when it's who, it's going to modify something or explain or do something. Who's the who in verse 2 modifying?
Christ Jesus.
So, it's subordinate to the first thing. It's modifying the first one. And what I did to the side of my paper, made it easier for me, is I put verse 3:1, I put main. I saw verse 2, I said, well, that's subordinate. Verse 3, well, that's subordinate because 4, it gives an explanation. And then next one, subordinate. I went down, and then finally came to, again, oh, a wherefore, whatever, this is a main one. Subordinate, subordinate, main, subordinate. So it just helped me to see then finally what is the main sentence or the main structure. And everything else is subordinate. It still has verbs and subject, verbs, and objects, but it's all describing, trying to relate to the very first statement.
So how do you show that it's all related?
Well, then you go like this.
Break it down more again?
Yeah, when you have, beside your page, you'll have these titles, right? Grammatical, biographical. When we start summarizing, we'll say, well, I saw this was over here I put main, subordinate, 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 right? Just for my own notes. And then finally here, we're going to modify right down to verse 7, and then we'll get to see it. Then we'll go across and do the other ones to the same verses. The other procedures, and then finally we'll just group everything without going through it. Okay, so, Blairster, verse 5, please.
And use conjunction.
Yeah.
Moses is your subject. Was faithful. Was the verb.
Verily?
So, everything.
Verily Moses, or verily was faithful?
Adverb. You know, so is the preposition as a servant, so for testimony. Of those things,
Can't hear you there.
they're all prepositional form. Which were to be spoken.
Okay. So what's the main subject, verb, object?
Moses was faithful.
That's it. Seems like Moses was faithful. Want to give a tab at verse 6, please? Do one word at a time. Everyone else can help.
But is a conjunction.
Yep.
Christ is your subject. As is son is that's your preposition.
Yeah.
Over his own house. Same thing.
Wouldn't that be two different ones or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
Because probably overs.
Yeah.
It's just, modifying the sign, but anyways.
Whose house are we?
That's different. Yeah. You know,
Those question things.
this here is modifying, but inside it, you can go backwards. We are, and it's inferred. We are his, the whose. So that's your whose house or his house. We are his house.
So is that supposed to be the object? This house?
Yeah, his house. But it's all modifying.
So if is a conjunction,
Yeah.
we is subject. Hold fast. That's the object.
shows it like an action, so it's verb.
Okay.
To whose house? What's that considered? Is that two different things, or is that one thing? Like an object or something?
We are.
Or no, it's the subject?
To tell you the truth, I don't know the exact name. It's the
It's like a.
whose house is the object. Like, we would normally say we are his house, right?
Yeah.
But the whose refers back to Christ, which was the subject. And I don't know the exact name of that principle. We use who and him and whose, where
So
it's
showing possession
it's
and
used. It's
belonging.
called an adjectival or objective something. Objective. No, the who's and whom. Objective pronoun or objective whatever, but it refers back to the subject. Acts like an object.
So that's
to
like an
modify it.
object then, in the sense we're looking at this as
Yeah,
an
it's an object of that little phrase, and the
Whose
whole
house?
phrase, right, just modifies Christ. So it's, you can leave it out. It's not really part of the sentence.
Because whose is referring to Christ, anyways.
Right. Just referring back to him. Just modifying Christ, while whose house we are.
So is it now a subject or is it an object? Like that whose house?
The whose house I have as an object
Object.
of that phrase. That whole phrase modifies Christ.
This would be the wiggly line, right? Object.
Yeah.
Okay, we hold past. That's verb.
Well, I wondered what that. We are Christ's house, in other words. So it's saying who's referring back to Christ. I don't know if that is the
Christ's
but
house we are.
That's the first sentence, probably. Like this.
So would you put whose as that?
It's still modifying Christ, but we are house. Well, we are Christ's house,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Isn't that probably a predicate of it?
which one?
Whose house we are his house. They both know it. They could both be the subject because it's.
Oh yeah, we're, because of the verb to be too. I mean, it just revolves around that. You can switch it around. Okay, so we hold fast confidence. What's that?
It's object.
Yeah.
And
Inactive.
the rejoicing is your object. Of is your conjunctive or something.
No. Prepositional phrase.
Oh, the unto the end. Prepositional phrase.
That's why you're object.
Yeah. Better. Now, let's summarize that.
Would it be adverb because we hold and how? How do we hold it? Like, wouldn't that firm be kind of an adverb? Because that's how we're holding it. We're holding. That sort of describes the. Is that adverb or yeah, adverb? It describes the verb.
Yeah, it describes the verb. Be firmly, wouldn't it?
But
Same sense.
But in this case, maybe just because of the way they, the grammatical, the old language, maybe that's stands for it's like
So,
firm,
like
but
this.
it's it describes like how you're holding how.
Okay. So, what do we got? What are the main subject, verb, object?
We are Christ's house.
Unto the end.
So, we are Christ's house.
Would you put unto the end?
What's that?
Would you put unto the end or does it matter?
Well, that's one of the if. Okay,
Yeah.
condition, but if. What's the next one in the sentence? Subject, verb, object.
We hold fast.
We hold fast the confidence.
Confidence.
We hold fast
Rejoicing.
the rejoicing. We hold fast firm to the end.
Hold fast the hope.
Now, of the hope is the rejoicing. What kind of rejoicing is? Rejoicing of the hope. Okay. Wasn't it a turn?
I didn't quite count it.
You got verse 7.
Where is conjunction? The Holy Ghost is the subject.
What's that? I'm assuming anyone else? Like it showing similarity. It's gonna be a similarity statement. I'm just gonna bring it up later, but okay, let's go on.
Say
That's
this.
the only thing too. If you get bogged in something, that's gonna just go on.
Say this verb. Let me start that all again. No. Today.
What's today?
Today's the Monday.
That's a
Took
new
you all
subject.
weekend to share with for that.
Isn't that like a new subject? Now it's a quotation. Saying
Yeah.
today.
But well, let's go by today.
Because his
Go by
voice
F.
would be.
Go by
F.
F. Go by F.
Oh, that's when. That's true.
Okay, go. What do you got? D.
Adverb.
He is so.
Your subject.
Today's an adverb.
Here his voice is verb.
Will here's the
Will
verb.
hears the verb and his voice is the object
Um.
or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you're doing good. It's good.
Okay, so what about the as and the today?
Well, the as. See, I don't know whether that's
Today if is
because it's showing similarity in a form of conjunctive. Okay, wherefore as and draw similarity to it. The if is a little bit easier.
Preposition. And today is an adverb. It's when. You will hear when.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
So what do you
Because
do for a
I'm not
condition?
as concerned with that as I am finding the main subject, verb, and object.
So what do you
You
do
will hear
for
what
a
when.
condition?
That's what it is. You
What's
will
that?
hear what.
So what do you do for the condition? Because if is the condition, is there anything special to it?
This is my
Well, and later on, it usually gives you the conclusion for the condition. You know, if, right? If you will hear his voice, on the day as the Father told me all that, wherefore I was grieved. Right? Comes out. I think it goes all the way down. They shall not enter my rest. That was the condition.
But the idea behind this is to find out what is it referring to, so we don't get thinking that that's what it is. We have to go back to what's the real subject. That's why we're doing this, is to find
Right.
out why. If this phrase is not maybe related to that, it might be related to 3 sentences ago, so you know what the actual statement is then.
That's right. And you can see the actual emphasis because we might get stuck on a little prepositional phrase that's important, but we make that the center
Yeah.
focus of the whole
Rather than the
passage.
main subject way back.
Whereas we're,
to-
so far we've seen this all, except for now, all was under consider. Consider this, and we're going to see when we look at logically, each point is telling you, well, why consider? Okay, or modifying the consider. Okay, so what's the main subject verb object?
Holy Ghost. Say it.
Okay, what's he say?
You don't hear. Okay.
Okay, now,
Is this here?
we'll just,
This is not done yet.
what's that?
It's not done yet.
Why not?
Like the verb. It's not.
No, because there's commas and it
Right.
goes on. but I'm done with this right now because we have to go on. So we had consider. Well, brethren, consider. Now you may be putting down the main one for each sentence, but just do it this way. If number 3.1 is the main, why did I make 3.2 subordinate?
Because it refers back to the who refers back to
Okay, the
Jesus
who.
Christ.
Okay, just so long you know, we're going to be circling that later on, but who refers back. Why do we make verse 3 subordinate?
This man
Refers to
refers back.
Okay. Why? How do you know?
4 again.
4. Okay. Verse 4?
4.
4. Verse 5? Main or subordinate?
Subordinate.
Okay, why?
And
Okay.
subordination.
Verse 6?
Subordinate.
Right, why?
But shows contrast.
Okay.
Subordination.
Verse 7?
Me.
Okay. Why?
Starting.
Wherefore? So, if we were to draw a line, that's what you gotta do. Because this is part of it. You analyze it, you see you simplify it, right? Then you gotta group it. And that's our first group. And the main thing is, brethren, consider Christ Jesus. And every other thing, now, later on, we're gonna look at it in more detail, why and how it relates to everything, but this is all you want to do. You just want to see what the main groups are for this part of observation. Remember, observation is simplifying group. Interpretation is the theme, restate, correlate, like get the outline. And then we go further on to correlate how it all works, the train of thought, then we finally do the application, and then we're finished the exegesis. But usually then we'll look, you kind of simplify it and generalize it, then it's like you go back into it later on for the exegesis, and then you start saying, well, why is this word here, why not this word, and all this kind of stuff. And you bring a lot of truths. But you gotta do this first to see what his thought is. If you read that first 6 verses, you might have said, well, the main point of that verse was he builded his house. Just because that really struck you, or whatever. He is God. Whereas it's all about considering. Okay. So is that, I think that helps a little bit now? To do it for tomorrow?
Clear as mud.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Better.
It's good to hear.
Better.
I like
Better.
the
Well, that's.
Yeah, it seems like I understand.
Now, biographical. We're gonna do. Well, this one's gonna be a green circle, but on our papers, it is a blue circle. So let's go through it quickly. Biographical. Tracy, first verse.
Brethren,
Okay.
apostle, high priest, Christ Jesus.
Okay. And what I would suggest is you go through and do the whole thing first, then go back and analyze to see repetition, and you can get a better outline rather than trying to verse at a time. Okay, verse 2, Amy.
Him, Moses, his.
How about who?
Who?
Oh, who?
Okay. Verse 3, Helen.
This man, Moses, he who,
Yeah. Third. Okay, verse 4, Chris.
House.
Okay. We're just thinking of
What do we think?
personalities, people.
Oh, okay. Oh, just people?
Yeah, biograph.
God.
Okay. Ellie.
Moses. His servant.
Okay. Verse 6, Blair.
Christ is
We,
Son.
son. You gotta think of
Son is not really
Yeah.
a person there, it's more of
It's referring to Christ.
Whether it's a title or whether it's a personal noun, personality noun. Okay, verse 7. Scott?
Holy Ghost
Yeah.
is.
this is something else to do with this.
Money
Is.
is gonna be one big mess.
He.
No, as you can see, it gets messed around here because this is thick and drying out on me. But now, just looking at that one portion, we're just going to do for the one to get the idea of it. Consider, we had consider brethren, all this. What's the, just generally, what's the first verse talking about? Just, I'll write down. First verse, if you were to summarize it. Okay, actually, I want like this. Us, and then Christ. Okay, verse 2.
He, like who is referring to next,
Right.
right?
Christ, Moses. Just mentioned. Okay, we're just doing quickly. I don't usually always write this down, but this is to get it through, do it in your mind, and later you can group it. Okay, 3.
Right.
Okay, so the same thing. Christ and Moses. 4.
Somebody good.
What's that?
Somebody ain't good.
Right. Well, by some man, but he that built all things is God. Okay. Verse 5. Verse 6.
Just looking for the main.
Yeah, we're just trying to group them now. Just in a sense, you're grouping what they're all, the different ones.
Christ,
see Christ.
and we.
And we. And then 7.
Holy Ghost,
Moses.
And you
and you.
Okay. Later we're going to see if you redo these, that generally, that's what you want generally.
what is that?
Christ and Moses. Us and Christ, Christ, Moses is all down through here, right? Kind of comparison. And Christ and us again. So overall, the whole thing is about Christ. But the second kind of thing, Christ, and in contrast to Moses, but the secondary thing is we, us. There's a purpose, there's a connection there. So that's it. And then, again, this is, you didn't get to go down through this part, but it's the same thing. You would see that there's a line there. It's talking about a different event and everything. And you would see, well, just by contrast, by grouping, there's a division there. So far, just by 2 methods, you see that it looks like the first 6 verses are grouped together. And you know why? By biographically, what it emphasizes, grammatically, what it emphasized. Okay, just going through topically. Now I'm going to do this just so we can see it.
Just put a hork on it there.
Yeah. Need something better than this. Okay, topically. So we said we're going to do red little circles. Let's go through it quickly. This one's, takes a little more thinking sometimes, because the topic can be a variety of things. It doesn't have to be the main emphasis all the time as such, like being in the main subject, verb, object, core, or whatever. So it takes observation.
Just tell them about
You almost
consider
have to
Jesus
compare.
Christ, more or less.
Okay, well, we'll think about person. We did biographically. You can look at the verbs too to see action.
Holy brethren there, that's all saved people, though, right? what they're talking about? As in, holy brethren.
Yeah, I would say so.
Sanctified people?
This is where it comes back to. The first part, you don't want to really interpret as such. You got to do a general, and you know some of the scriptures. But this is where it comes back to later on when you go through it. We kind of recognize that's what's talking about believers, holy brethren. And when they talk about brethren in the scriptures, so in a couple of times, I think the Apostle Paul in Romans, where he refers to his own brethren, meaning Jews without faith, Jews by blood.
So
But most of the time, it means Christians.
So the first verse in it, it's just making the statement on holy brethren, Christians.
At this
you know,
part,
consider Jesus Christ.
Consider Christ.
right, and that's the idea. But let's go up from the first verse, because to really know what's the topic, you have to do it by comparison. A lot of it's repetition. Okay, but Christ is I mean, that was the main emphasis. That was the object, right? So, who was faithful to him to appoint him also. Moses was faithful around his house. You see any key words repeated in that phrase? Faithful. Look for repetition too.
Is this supposed to be red?
Yeah, it's supposed to be red.
Him, his.
Okay, we're trying to keep away, if you can, from biographical. We already did that. Okay? Just things that are topic. Look at verse 3 now. Anything to repeat there?
Well, builded is in 3 and 4.
Okay, the idea of builded, the idea of house.
About
Right.
counted worthy and honor.
Every house, builded. We want to look for repetition first. It may be a topic because of
that's
importance.
more or less the same, though.
Faithful. I'm certain it is.
Built. Okay. We see it, there's another one that repeats Moses, right, and pronouns and all that, but we'll try to keep the other things. Verse 5, faithful again. So we're seeing repetition here. His house again. Now there's something, okay. Verse 6, Christ, house. Okay. So what seems to be, what now? Now you want to look at, you've seen a general grouping. What are some synonyms for faithful? Can you see any?
Worthy.
What's that, Blair? The idea of worthy. The idea takes a bit, the idea of hold fast to confidence. And you're faithful if you hold fast. Okay, anything with Christ is in there. And then the idea of house. Yes. Now, to try to just group it and analyze it a bit. What is it saying? Okay, we see faithful. How do they kind of interrelate for this topic? How does faithful and house, these people, how do they interrelate? What's the statement? Maybe you can conclude it. Verse 2.
Moses was faithful to his house.
Okay. What's the saying about faithful?
You gotta have some faith to show your faithfulness. You have to have testimony. Where's your testimony? It's gonna be where you're around. So that's where house comes in.
Okay. That's going a little bit farther than I wanted. that's what we end up doing. That's the interpreting parts and stuff. I just want to kind of to group. What does it mean in verse 2? Just not what it means, but what does it say? Who's the who? Christ was faithful. Moses was faithful. So that's all we want to draw. It's just talking about, yeah, and it's just faithful, you know. And then faithful to what? Usually to something. Just a general idea. Both, in a sense, faithful to house. Okay, whatever a house is, they're both faithful. That's the main idea. And all the rest is talking about worthy and talking about the house, right? Who builds and the relationship to the house, how they're faithful.
Smells. I just love walking in a tobacco shop.
No.
Oh, I know.
Carry on.
Pipe?
Got that on?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it is.
It's on? Okay. So basically, it's faithful to house. The whole idea is the relationship to the house. But that's where the topic goes in. First off is consider. Okay, consider Christ. He goes into this thing about comparing Moses and Christ and this idea of a house. And he concludes it to show our relationship down here. Just as Moses was a house and everything, and then this comes into logic. You know, Moses was in the house and was faithful and all this. Christ is over the house. We are the house. So just as a household was faithful to Moses, if we're in the household and Christ is over us, we should hold fast, confidence. Consider, hold fast. We're going to see that in the logic later. Be faithful to house and
Hold fast.
hold fast. Consider. Why? Because faithful to the house and everything. We're in the house. We are the house.
Because he is.
So hold fast. Consider, hold fast. But the idea is all dealing with the faithfulness and how in relation to the household, whatever it is. Okay.
Should have got some water. You want some coffee?
Oh, Blair wouldn't mind giving it to me. For this. The next one, we did biographical, topical, who, what, where. So geographical. Okay. Tracy?
Oh. Is there any tape around?
First one.
Heavenly.
Okay. Now geographical, I put it as a square, black square, but
Black square?
sort of,
No.
whether it's a space or a type of.
Blue square. Blue square.
Blue.
Chronological is black
Oh
square.
yeah, sorry, blue square. Colorblind. Okay, verse 2. Oh, and one other one. And again, this is later on when you get into it, you start thinking about it. Wherefore, holy brethren, talking to certain people, you can almost ask them, where are they? But that's a later question.
Heavenly is also an adjective. I mean, an adverb.
Partakers of
It's a heavenly calling.
It's from heaven.
the calling. Isn't it the calling? Yeah. The calling is a noun. Maybe a.
Didn't make it an adjective.
Thank you. What's that? It's all part of this phrase, of the, right? And that, Heavenly's modifying this, and the calling. Partakers of the calling. Like an object.
And you can anyways.
So anyways, but maybe heavenly, I write that down. You know, that's, you see that's not a major geographical thing, that's, you're getting to, you know, minor things. Verse 2, any geographical?
House.
Okay, this is where, and you can put it down, right? Put a question mark. Is it talking about a literal house thing, or a place of a house, or is it talking about something else? And go on. But we want more geographical in a sense too, like a location, where something's located, and the object. Verse 3, Howard?
Well, you're on the same thing as the house and the house.
Right.
And same with verse 4 is the house.
I really don't think, and this one I really call into question, but it's just the same all the way down. Verse 5. Chris?
Verse 5? I guess house, and that's where it is, right? Where it's taking place?
Yeah. Okay. Or, and not really.
It's not really taking place there, no. So it's not really house, there's no real, still related back to the original heavenly, I guess, eh?
And that was just a modifier. It's not really a solid geographical location. 6.
See there in 6 it says own house.
Right. So, and I don't think he's just talking about a place on Pim Street. I
It's
think it's
we
talking
are.
about
Whose
a
house
more
are we?
than a building. More than a structure, an organism or something. So,
There isn't really a lot in this
No.
section here.
so that's why sometimes they don't really, by using a certain approach doesn't glean out too much. It will later on.
So
So geographically, I think for this one I just had as a question, location of the brethren. Hey, that could be talking about location, that's about it. All the rest I just said, well, there's really nothing. And this part wasn't until the, well, we'll just do one verse down. When we're looking at historical. Yeah, okay. The next verse down.
Yeah, there it is. In the wilderness, eh?
Right.
Downstairs.
So there's an actual geographical location in the wilderness. And then, and that relates back to starting at this whole statement here, right? This is all the same sentence. So you see here, there's really nothing, okay? Maybe just where the location of the brethren, that's about it, because he's talking to the present time, but the main thing is in the wilderness. And we're going to see that falls right down through to to the end, and everything that deals with it. You see other ones, just quickly to show you the other in the wilderness, verse 17. So still talking about it. Out of Egypt, we know that's before, right? The wilderness. So it's right down, and not enter. If you're really back to historical vein, that's why they did this inner. This goes on with historical, and historical goes on with chronological. This could be like in the land, or wherever it means, right? So we see there's the major division basically in the wilderness. Deals with these verses 7 down. Okay, it's going to use geographic talk about that compared to it could be heavenly or where they are. So geographical, who, what, where, when. So chronological. And for chronological was black square. So verse 3. Verse 1. Tracy. Any specific time elements given, like in words?
No.
Okay. What's another time element you can look for?
Verb.
Verb tense. Okay. What, this journey, what's the verb tense?
Past.
What is the verb? Okay. What would that be? Present. So? Present. Verse 2. Any direct,
Do we square that or something, or?
no. See, the ones to square are actual maybe time references,
Like
after
today.
or now or today. Okay. The other ones you can't, it's already been underlined with the grammatical approach, and it's going to get really messy. You can if you want. Usually you can just pick it out, why you put present or whatever.
Was faithful was mentioned twice, right?
Right, so what,
Verse 2.
yeah, what would that be?
So that's past.
Past. So right there, you see that I put it like this. So if it's not a major division but a little division, I see present and past. So there's a present statement, right? And then it goes into the past. Verse 3, any time reference. Amy.
Just that was mentioned again.
Yeah. So that makes it
Past.
past. Verb tense rather than a specific word. Verse 4, Ellen?
Maybe house is building, so that's, could be present or future. Okay. But he hath built. He built, which is, Well, build it, I don't know, what, in modern English, is that what it is? What is
Kind of.
it?
So basically a past idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Past.
It doesn't really state a here or now because
Right. Just stating a fact, you can teach you what
that it is
built already. Okay, verse 5. Chris.
Past.
Okay, why?
Was. He was, like it was a past event. He was faithful.
Where do you see that? Verse 5 you looking?
And Moses verily was
Oh,
faithful.
was. Okay, was faithful.
Or spoken it was.
Which word? To be. What's that?
What's that, which one?
To be. Which word? Oh, sorry about that. Which word? To be.
To be, where is that? I don't see it to be.
Which were to be spoken
oh, are you on
after?
6? I was going
No.
5.
Not by.
I'm
I was on 5.
no, it's we're at the very last of the
Yeah,
verse.
which
there.
were to be spoken
Oh.
after.
There's
That's
time
present.
reference.
I mean, that's the future.
After.
So
So it's interesting. This is really interesting.
past.
Because Moses was faithful, past, right? This event has happened. As a servant, forward testament, those things which were to be, future, spoken, when?
After.
After. So it's still past, but it's the idea of it's future from the time of Moses,
Wait, so past from us.
past from Moses. So the whole context is past. And just, you want to put there is the word after. You actually had a word there. After. And verse 6. Elliot.
Is. Oh, wait. Who says, are we? It's present.
Okay, present and there's one other thing that's in there. It's if we hold.
So it's also future a little bit.
Yeah, because a future condition, but this is present. And when you see there's a line there again, I just have to take my word for it for this time. But you see from present, past, present, and so you see again how. Remember, if we put them all in a row, how the middle example, the contrast between Moses and Christ in the past and comparing it, the present statement, consider, the present again, hold fast. You see how this is one unit and how it all connects. So then this is this statement and this statement and all this in between. So almost in a sense, this is stating, starting off with your statement, whatever. This is giving your support for it. This is giving now, do this. And then just to show an example how I can put the line there. Verse 7. Tracy, can you do that please?
Present
Okay, is there a time thing in there?
today.
Okay. And also a future thing.
Yeah.
So is that today now, or is that today back then when he was speaking?
Yeah, when he said it was today, because say it. And then harden not, this is all part of the same sentence, harden not your heart and the provocation in the day of temptation. Right, in the wilderness. So it's present, in a sense for the statement, in the future type idea.
Oh,
Condition.
yeah, but,
And it's said in the past.
yeah, it is.
I love
That's
that.
the point.
And this is great. Okay, because then you go back to the past in verse 9, and this whole section you do with the wilderness again. Okay. As you see, there's not, takes a little bit of.
Is there water there?
Oh yeah, I kind of like doing that now. Clear out my mind. Oh yeah, I'm not sloppy.
History.
Okay, so
Atomic bomb.
we did start off grammatical, Then who, what, where, when,
Where for?
kind of a where for that idea, but we do historical. Chronological, and then we do historical.
When?
It deals with people, places, and events. We're looking more for events as such, not just a progression of time or. So events that you could probably look up, or you have to research into to get more of an idea of why they're referring to it. So historical. And this I had as a black circle. Again, you can change this how you want to afterwards. Verse 1, any historical event. Remember, ask questions.
How about
Not directly, but what's one that we know of? But this one here. When did they become partakers of the heavenly calling? Right? When? Like, what was the event? Was there a certain time? It's one thing you may ask questions, you may never get the answer as such. It may never be in the text. Okay. Their salvation, or was there a time, specific time for these people to be partakers? I mean, rather than individualized, maybe a corporate hall or whatever, because it's plural, brother. But other than that, there's not really a historical event. Verse 2?
Appointed him.
Yeah. Appointed, when was that? Are you talking divine decree or what? But that's why you don't necessarily need to answer it, you just got to see if there's some events. If the events tie in, if there's really any correlation. 3.
Was counted worthy?
Yeah, you could probably look at that. Just basically, we're going to see, and it talks about Moses. Now, there's a person, so it must have a history to him, right? A historical event of Moses. I mean, it comes up in the biographical, but coming up again probably historical. You know, so when was he counted worthy? Is there a way you could cross-reference and find out? Verse 4.
he that built all things?
Right. What is that talking about?
The creation.
You assume? Okay.
You're
Oh,
squaring.
I'm sorry. I'm squaring it.
Is that, that seems to me not so much as, you're not using it as a historical event or as something that's teaching.
Could be.
He that built all things as God. They're just making passing references. They're not
But
really
still-
using it.
Just allegorical, historical fact to it.
Well, it's you're putting words.
Well, that's right. Just it doesn't mean it's gonna lend to the grouping, but it could be a historical event. It could have been built all things. It could be referring to creation.
Well, there's no doubt that it is referring to it, but it's not really using it as an event.
No, yeah, right. No, in a sense, it itself is an event. It's not really probably used to advance the theme or
It's just
the
using
topic
it.
anymore. But
It's
it's
just
making a
using it as
reference to it.
description.
Right. Which is true. But we just want to analyze it first, and then we're going to just group. Okay, verse 5. What's that? Yeah. Basically, again, just Moses. Okay, that's what it's dealing with. Historical person, event that you can look at. You know, was faithful and he was a servant.
Moses has been circled in every single color.
Now again, you don't necessarily have to circle this part. I circle when it's specific things like all things of God, or is, all things is God, and things like that, where it's a certain event. There's just like the wilderness, or the provocation. Right? That sounds like a certain event, certain time, something happened. What was the provocation? 6. The historical event. Remember, it's not necessarily kind of plan where it's not necessarily history. An event that may happen. You see it? The end. It's just talking the end of our lives, talking the end of the world, end of the age. It may not advance the theme, but we have the end. So,
You just squared it again.
verse 7.
It's supposed to be circle.
Supposed to circle.
I'm sorry. Verse 7.
Today.
Oh, it's in corner.
Okay, no, we're looking for a historical event. verse 8.
That one is verse 7.
Actually, 7 and 8.
And then, well,
They're all the same same sentence.
Yeah, still, it's all historical event. So it's
Right.
really saying something.
Talking about, you could say, well, when did he say it, right? Circle. But the main thing, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation, in the day of temptation. Sounds like the provocation, the day of temptation, saying a certain event.
So this is specific.
Verse 9,
tempted me. Your fathers tempted me.
prove me and saw my works.
That's the state of
Now we see, this was a time when we never went down this far. That would have been a chronological one. You say chronology? 40 years is a direct time reference. But this idea, you don't have to circle it because it's the whole, you just circle the whole verse. You're seeing it's all dealing with a certain time period. So, again, we see this come across like this. And if we're to generally summarize, well, yeah, there's just questions. Partakers, question mark, you know. There's an historical event when they became partakers. What about the appointed? There are more questions rather than just advancing the theme any. The main thing was the historical event or life of Moses, right?
Moses.
It's Moses?
Moses.
Moses. And this one is basically the day of temptation or provocation. And you'll see it down in here again, as in the provocation. Did provoke. When you do topical 2, you see that, you know, provocation, provoke, and sin, and tempt. You get the topic comes out too. And what's related to unbelief. Okay.
Okay, historical, and partaking.
Question.
Is that what it says?
Yeah, like partakers. Was that like a historical event that we could look up and look into?
Okay, and what was the next thing?
Appointed. You know, who was faithful to him that appointed him? Or was that was that a specific time? That could add benefit to the text later on when we exegete it. But we want to see what advances the text or the train of thought, and this all deals with Moses. Even though it's biographical in a sense, it's a historical thing that we might be able to look into. The other one mainly seems to deal with, again, in the wilderness, the location and stuff, and also the time. A certain time keeps talking about the time of temptation or the provocation. So it's something that we could look into and see if there are other cross-referencing scriptures. Is there the actual narrative, whatever, in the Old Testament that we can see what did they do to provoke God. But that's later on. We just want a group. Okay. We see basically this all is taking place during the time in the wilderness. Coming out of Egypt seems, not entering into the land. Now logical. This is a good one. No, this is your grammatical one. And the other one's really tied down.
Be messy. Oh.
How's that? Sure not.
Oh, it's a tree.
Okay.
Not too clever.
This one is logical.
Red box.
And we have red box. I remember what place this one too. But it really doesn't look that cluttered when you're on your page. It actually goes pretty good.
It looks nice, actually. It's pretty messy.
Okay.
Why are we doing it?
Logical. Remember, you're looking for right. Advancements in progression of thought. Statements like wherefore, therefore, but showing contrast. There's about actually I even got two more. There's my sheet. You can show purpose like that or to, right? Or explanation for because. Showing explanation. Conclusions. Oh, nice one. Conclusions showing therefore, thus, or so. Contrast showing but, not, or yet. Similarities, as or like. Right? This is all showing logic to show a point where I was progressing from one point to another. A conjunction, and or also. Result, less. That's showing a negative result. And a condition, if. So these are things you can look for logic, and these are just some of the key words that just show you progression. So let's go through. Let's see, verse 1, Tracy. And this is supposed to be red square. Wherefore?
Yeah.
Red square. Red square. Okay. Anything else in there? Okay. So we'll just put wherefore here. Right? Two. Amy.
As also.
Okay. Anything else? Now we know this one because of the who. We want to kind of see it logically, right? So we'll just put the who as wherefore.
Bless you.
Who, and it's showing as also. Now I don't have enough room on here, but on mine, you can put in brackets, you can put in anything you want. As also shows a similarity, right? So it's underneath wherefore. Verse 3, Helen?
In as much as.
Okay. Any others? Before, the very first. So, we have underneath here, it's still modifying the wherefore. For is giving an explanation. It's just modifying, is this really? Yeah, medium, good there. For, give an explanation. In as much as, what's that showing? Yeah, similarity. And the in as much as is describing the for describing the wherefore. See how it's working?
Yeah, I see. I don't know what you wrote. For, and then you got it
Oh,
beside
okay.
for. No, there.
For explanation.
Thank you.
EX. As showing similarity. So you can see what he's using. He starts with on. Wherefore is concluding statement. Right? So it concludes. It's actually interesting because you'll see he concludes something or makes a final statement and then goes to prove it rather than trying to prove it and then give a final statement. Wherefore, consider Christ. Similarity, who, like Moses. Why? For an example, was counted worthy, more glory, as he builds a house. So it's just showing progression as he goes through. Okay, verse 4, Chris, please.
What are we looking for logical?
Okay, you're looking for actually about 8 things. The words that you're like, for an explanation, like for this reason, or because of,
So,
or purpose.
so then around 4, right? So 4 then.
Okay, so red square around 4. Also you can show contrast, but, or,
But is the other one.
right,
Isn't considered as a
is, no, that's your verb. For, but. So again, underneath this, still continuing. For, and but. So for was an explanation, but is a contrast. Verse 5. Elliot.
Verse 5.
Show continuation. Yeah. And
As.
okay.
Yeah. And the why.
Is it showing a similarity?
For. Wait. No.
I don't know about that. Like, it could be right. I don't know which. Just include it. We just want to see that there's nothing, not a new statement. It's all still modifying. So, but, sorry. This is. But, and, it was continuing with the but, and Moses, but he builds all things, and Moses, as, showing similarity, this was showing continuation, right, of the thought, but was showing a contrast for the for, right, and was continuing on with the but, as was showing a similarity, and for,
With and?
yeah, and for was a continuation.
Explanation.
For was an explanation of the as, right? If not, then it modifies it before. No, so it's back out here. Sorry. The for is. So if you were to read through it, wherefore consider Christ Jesus, who was faithful as Moses. Why? For a man, this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he, similarly as who builds a house is more honored than the house. Christ builds it. Moses was in it. Okay, that's the whole point. And for, why, going back up to here, wherefore for, every house is built by some man, but he built all things as God. Okay? And again, just before, that's why he's counted more worthy. He is God. He built the house. Moses was just in it. Now, but he that builds the house, all things is God. And Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant, and he was faithful for a testimony of those things that were to be spoken after. Verse 6, Claire? But, over his house, whose house we are, if we hold fast confidence and there's no hope for him. So, but, in contrast to this whole past example, but Christ, right, when as, showing a similarity, as a son, Moses was as a servant, Christ as a son, if, and this is to us, if we hold fast, condition. Verse 7, Scott. Wherefore? Any more?
Today?
No.
Oh, if.
As, which is interesting. Similarity in a similar way as the Holy Spirit said back then, he's saying today. Similarly, he's saying today, condition, if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. So therefore we gotta wherefore. And then we're gonna see that this is a new train of thought. So verses 1 to 6, wherefore, everything modified to wherefore, consider. We're going to see wherefore, first, wherefore, brethren, consider Christ Jesus. Wherefore, harden not your hearts. That was, if we went back to grammatical, that's what it was talking about. And it's going to give reasons again. For, but, like, as. So that's the logical. And then the grouping part is this. Once you go through it, you just group them. Okay, this is a new thought, this is a new thought, this is a new thought. Okay. So, go through it again. We've got grammatical, biographical, topical, who, what, where, geographical, when, chronological, historical, then logical, textual, contextual, proportional. So the next one's textual. This one's easier. Oh, yeah.
Spring milk, please, the whole thing. Oh, that's basic. I don't think this.
Just need those spray bottles.
Yeah. Okay. Now textual, we want to see what kind of form you have to put this in. It's not really, I didn't put any markings with this. You could devise your own if you want. Or just picking out when they're talking, like say it or quotations or something. Basically, I just went through and just analyzed it. So we'll just do that. Verse 1. What kind of form is that in, Tracy? What'd you say? Like the first question, ask yourself, is anyone talking? Or is anyone being quoted? If not, then that usually helps you right away.
It's not didactic.
Right. Just didactic or teaching. Okay? Let's put the D. Verse 2, Amy?
Same thing as number 1.
Okay. Verse 3.
The same, teaching.
Okay. 4. Chris?
I don't know what we're trying to do here.
Okay, here you want to see if you want to see what kind of form it's written in to see again if you can see another grouping or division. One form is teaching, right? Just where the writer is just teaching you something, giving you facts and figures and things like that. It's known as didactic, okay, or teaching. There's narrative. Usually it's third person. I'm quoting someone else, okay, or a historical narrative. I'm telling you about a certain event. I'm quoting people in it. Or there's dialogue, where you have two people talking back and forth. You get a lot of that in the Gospels, like between the Pharisees and the Lord. There's other forms that you probably won't run across here, but there's also poetry, poetic form, prose, proverbs, testimony, forms like that. So,
This would be teaching didactically.
okay, yeah. So, there's 5, Ellie?
Narrative, or like it's not teaching. It's telling about Moses, how Moses was faithful.
Okay.
People know that Moses was faithful.
It's probably teaching. He's not really quoting anybody, and you may call it. Maybe there's different ways of defining teaching. Maybe it's historical teaching, or whatever. But we'll call it didactic.
It can be, like, all from 2 on could be historical narrative, too. But it's all.
Everything knows.
Talk about it.
I think it's historical teaching, but it's not really relating the events as they occur chronologically or anything. I
Yeah.
think it's just summarizing stuff or
He's just taking points.
just taking points. So that's why it could be like historical teaching in a sense to summarize what you're doing in teaching. Verse 6, where were we?
Which is
Where?
second.
Verse 7. Kind of connects to verse 8, so. What's that? Uh-huh.
Well, there's not 2 people speaking.
So it's not dialogue.
So it's, well, it depends. So you define narrative.
He's quoting the Holy Spirit, so it's narrative.
What's that?
He's quoting something,
Yeah.
so it's narrative.
Yeah, it's narrative. It's third person. It's not the actual person talking, right? Not the person writing who's talking as such. It's for a monologue or whatever. I'm sure there's differences there. It's not dialogue, just them talking between each other. but he is quoting people.
But doesn't narrative also mean just reading, just somebody, because this can all be narrative, it's just, because if you have a narrator,
Yeah, but the narrator's teaching. We want to define a little bit more. And the narrator's not doing the talking. He's quoting somebody. So narration, verse 8. Start by Tracy. Now,
it can be continuing a narrative too.
see, it all connects. You got to go also to verse 9.
So narrative.
Right. Verse 9.
Down to verse 9.
Verse 10. So I swear my wrath. Verse 11. Take heed, brethren. What's that?
Okay, that's teaching. I
Okay.
guess.
We're going to see, well, you see right here, there's a line here, there's a line here. And that's all the way, this part goes all the way down. This is going to be all didactic again. So it just gives you, you simplified it, by looking at the textual form, how it was written, generally, you saw that the first sections are teaching, next uses a narrative, the last uses teaching again, to prove a point. And you see that these, again and again, we see there's a division between 6 and 7. That there's a train of thought, there's another train of thought, and a third train of thought. And each one of these complements the others. It really emphasizes. Contextual. Now, what you want to look here is for contrast, whether it's in the use of certain words like just but or as, showing similarity, but contrast as similarity, using some synonyms or antonyms for word like antonyms, light and darkness, or antonyms like love and affection, something like that. You want to see kind of contrast those draws.
For me, I found a lot of similarities between the contextual and the logical. When I did my thing, I just grouped them both together because you did basically use the same thing.
Well, they will fall. I mean, they're going to comment because that's the train of thought. But as you see, there are some differences. What it draws out more is you'll find the contextual when you use correlation, and you're going to draw a map or going to draw a chart, and you're going to say, okay, now let's compare. Basically, that's the kind of idea. Let's compare Christ and Moses. You're not going to put in the such as the wherefore, buts, fors, and ands. You're just going to say these are the facts and how they relate to one another. That's really all the contextual is. That's what I find it to be.
But in your analysis, it's almost the same.
If you use but and as, but sometimes not. In your analysis of logical, you're not looking for similar words, or you're not looking for opposite words to give the emphasis of comparison. So that's why it's a little bit different. We'll see as we go through here. So contextual. Is there anything in verse 1 that is showing some kind of contrast or comparison? I like to use the word comparison rather than contrast because you're not looking just for differences, you're looking for similarities too.
Also, they're both correct. But
That's both one.
Yeah. It's all the title and stuff. Okay. Verse 2. You want to get
Who
to
is
comparison.
As
Moses
also,
was faithful too. Sorry.
as also Moses was faithful.
So who are they comparing?
Christ and Moses.
Okay, so we'll just kind of do that. Christ, Moses. Well, what's it say? What word in there shows you a comparison?
That's also.
Okay, the also is continuation. Yes. Right? I have no symbol for that. You just have to look at it. So, Christ was faithful as Moses was faithful. So you have Christ faithful, Moses faithful. Verse 3. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses. What kind of comparison are you showing there? More glory. See, something different. Just more glory. You don't have to necessarily put in what's missing. Less glory, but that's just assumed, but just more glory. Another one, verse 3. More honor. And then it's later on. You would, when you were given an explanation, an exposition, you would tell them why Christ. You would compare it back to Christ and everything, but more honor. Verse 4.
As the servant. That's verse 4.
Yeah. Now you could put this maybe in parentheses, but I mean, because what we know who Jesus is and what, as basically the kind of point he's trying to inherit in the text. We're going to see later. That's the whole difference with Christ compared to anyone else. He's God. These other men, they're limited. But let's go on. You know, that's just going to be used as a side thing. Okay, verse 5. What's it say about Moses? Sometimes you have to go back over this stuff. What's it saying about Moses? Okay, he was faithful. We already have that.
Oh,
How
as a
though?
servant.
Okay, as. Showing one. But I want to do one before, because we're going to see this will make a difference. In-house as a servant. Right? Verse 6. What shows a contrast?
But
Or a comparison. But
what's a contrast? As is comparison.
Right.
As
Christ, so we're going back Christ, as a son. So we put it right beside and over his house, his own house. And just to show possession too. He's in the house, it's over, and it's his. Right? He's just not in it, it's his house. And where we noticed before, whose house we are. Now, we call fast, confidence, addressing the end. So, then we'll go to verse 7. We already noticed that there's a break there. So contextually, there's been a comparison between Christ and Moses. And we're going to find contextually that the book of Hebrews itself, contextually, using comparison, there's a lot. It's almost the whole point. There's a lot of inherent stuff in there. So, you just look over your chart. We've almost correlated now. We've almost done one of the things where you can do a chart for this. But Christ, both faithful, but Christ gets more glory, more honor, because what's inferred is he's God, he's the builder, he owns the house, he's the builder, he's God, the other is just man. He's over the house, it's his. Moses was in his house. Now, I'm not talking about building here, we're going to see it means more than that. He was a son, he was a servant. And in a household, especially back in these days, a servant had no rights. You know, it was the property along with the house. The son had full rights. You know, the prodigal son, type idea, he had full rights. He owned it. So, we see comparison. And then, what you see contextually later on, this one's a little bit more, is, let's see, let's go just a little bit further and then we'll just talk about proportional. You see anything in verse 7? I'm just going to answer out so we can go quickly. And in verse 7, well, verse 8. What's contextual in verse 8?
Harden not your hearts as in provocation.
Okay. As. So in the provocation, so it's referring back to something, like it wants to compare something. The heart. Harden not.
So you wouldn't use in anything.
Where's in? Oh, in the. It's referring to a certain time or place.
Location.
Yeah. As in as showing a similarity, as something, and this something happens to be at a certain place or time. The day of temptation in the wilderness. Verse 9. What did they do? Okay, they tempted, proved, and who were they?
Fathers.
Fathers. We're going to see that this is what we're comparing to. Who's the other person inferred then? What did it say here in verse 8? Whose heart was it?
Your heart.
Your heart. So you. It's talking about us and the fathers, right? Or the brethren, whoever they are. And now it's saying, hard not, they tempted and proved. Even when they saw. Okay, what's another result? Verse 10. If we looked at the idea of comparison to heart, so we have a result. The result was grief. God's grieved with their condition. Another one. They err in their hearts. Right? And swear that they shall not enter in my rest. And we're going to see there's another one dealing with the rest.
Well, okay, you should put air on the other side.
And the fathers erred. The fathers
That's
grieved.
where you got it.
Yeah,
The father didn't air his head.
Fathers.
the fathers.
Oh,
Rest is another subtopic. The heart. So you can go through and you analyze what this passage is about the heart. And you go through and you see it's about rest too. The result. See, in you have evil heart of unbelief. Again, shows the heart condition and what it's equal to. So you end up going down, and what you'll find is these first verses deal with Christ and Moses. This deals 7 down to the end, deals with the kind of response, the condition of faith, a kind of response, and that's why you get statements like this. Again, harden not your hearts. Harden not your hearts. And again, how they provoked, and the day of provocation. And this all deals with the topic. We never went through this topically. But the voice, the word, the message. We're going to see that in chapter 4. The word, the message. Just like in verse 1 of 1. God spake, He spoke. The word, the message, and how they responded. And then encouraging, hold fast. Don't be like this poor example of unbelief. Be like this. Trust. Consider the superior person in that. We're going to say as we go through. We're going to just generally analyze. Just finishing off. Proportionally. Is there anything we can see proportionally? Again, it can deal things with climax or anticlimax, going from general to specific, cause and effect, personal, impersonal, collective and individual, negative, positive. What kind of changes? Anybody? Basically, and it comes out in the structure. This is why I think the proportion works better in larger portions of Scripture. The only thing you can really say is, well, you have your statement, you have a build-up to your climax, right? You have your example and the build-up to a climax. It's really not going to give us much at this point. The proportional is, for that one area anyways, the proportional is better suited for larger portions of Scripture. We can see how much was devoted to a certain area to see the importance of it, or how it built as a whole. So, then the last section is not on here, and what we do later, first, all we want to do at this stage is we just want to analyze, simplify it here, and then group it to where each section you can see what this is one group, another group, another group. You don't have to title it yet or anything like that, just group it. It's just similar themes or similar topics or whatever it's talking about. Then, later when we go through again, we're going through and we say, well, it looks pretty well like verses 1 to 6 are one unit. And when we know what the theme is and the purpose of the writer, when we go through, we can look again at those verses, how look right across here, and then we can title it. Like start saying, well, we'll call this section consider the high priest. Brethren, consider the high priest. We'll call the other one, chapter 4 came out real nice. You probably, usually a lot of times you do it grammatically or logically, but it came out like, I think it was logically was therefore, and then, but basically let us fear, let us labor, let us hold fast, let us come boldly. And you see that those are major sections, and then you can break them down individually and go through and then generalize. Now, for tomorrow, you have your pages, do chapters 5 and 6. With this method, I want you to be able to hand in your sheets to me so I can just go over your work to see how you're doing, give any comments I can on it, whatever. And so do it like this, take the page at the back, go through it, analyze it, chapters 5 and 6, you've been handed them, read through the book of Hebrews, and those you handed in past assignments, I'll take off 10% per day for late assignments, so if you didn't hand one in, or there's a certain section, say like the very first section, that you didn't do or whatever.
You realize we have a night class on Mondays?
We gotta progress through. And by what I've looked at on a thing, the way that we're going, we're just gonna be able to get done.
Now that we got it this way, it saves a lot of time we don't know what to do.
Yeah. This will save a lot of time. It should take about an hour to do all 10, the one portion.
That's what took me on that.
Yeah. So hopefully this, and if you got any suggestions or other things that you found that, just let me know, because hopefully by the end of the course we'll make it so it's relatively easy to go through and analyze. Because remember, the key to doing this is personal Bible study. One, knowing the book of Hebrews, when you can go through, later on you sit down yourself and go through any book of the Bible and see what it says, and then get personal application.
That's nice.
So every time you get your fade, with that, then they'll fade out. Get it? Then you'll fade and then don't want it fading out for a break or something.
That's all your stuff.
Okay. Chapters 5 and 6.
Tracy says it's your ready.
This one. Oh,
Oh, I forgot to put my name on it.
it's just,
My name on it.
What's yours?
What? Oh.
Your Bible.
As we start today's class, before we go on and just again look at some more analysis, we're going to start doing so much breakdown like we have been doing, going over. I think the idea was reached at the last classes. But do the next part, it's not just analysis, that's this very first stage of observation, just seeing exactly what's there. But the other part of it is to simplify, find the main emphasis of what's there, or the more important parts of what's there, and then to group it. That's the last part. Now all that is the part of the observation, just to group what's there, and you can see this is a complete thought, this is a thought, this is a thought, and this is the emphasis of that thought. And hopefully today we're going to do that. Instead of analyzing where we got the information, we're just going to look at the results, what we've gotten, and see if we can group each one. So I'm going to go a little bit farther, because the next stage too is finally just making a little summary of the points, a basic outline, without interpreting or how it relates each one, but each point just to make a little bit of an outline. And that's what we should be doing each time, but we're doing it a stage at a time. Also, just for the course, I wanted to finish doing the approaches and observations by this Friday, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. If we go too fast, then we might get lost. And this is the most important part, just like we said in our notes. The observation is the key. By doing proper observation, you can have a better chance, or it's easier and less chance of error in your interpretation. Any observations or anything that anyone's found, or found to work better or easier? Or and you're finding that the chart's okay, the way it's going. Good. We'll just have to do it. Another thing to keep in mind too, this by rights, when this course was offered as a semester course, it was done over a whole year. So it's 2 semesters. And again, by rights, if it was condensed to the modules, it'd actually be 6 weeks. So it's actually, we're not going to be able to cover everything we wanted to, but this is the most important. Rather than just doing a commentary, I mean, the books that I showed at the very first of class, anyone could grab a commentary and have someone go through what they found. That's not going to help you as such, and you'll be dependent upon commentaries and other people's perspectives. And you're not going to get the joy of personal discovery. You're not going to get quite the life impact that you would otherwise. So that's why we're going over this. This is more than just learning about the book of Hebrews. Think of it the other way around. We've chosen the book of Hebrews to go through, to be familiarized with it, but just to use it as a field in which to practice. The main goal is to learn the principles of exegesis, to learn how later on, when there's any book or any topic or anything, when you're going through, how to do it yourself without the aid of secondary sources. And then the only time you're going to use secondary sources is then after you're done to look up and see maybe there's something else that they got, but then you'll know for sure what it says. And that's the point. And then hopefully secondary to this is that we can learn more about the book of Hebrews, at least the general train of thought, the purpose, and general applications, and then try to go beyond that. And we go right into applying it and executing it. So what we'll do is we're going to look at chapter 5 and 6, which are assigned. And this way you're familiarized with it. At least you read through it, and you got to know a little bit what it's talking about. Familiarized with it. I think what we should do is, even before we analyze it, we'll just read through it, familiarize ourselves again. It's always good to read the segments and thoughts as a whole unit. Just like reading the book of Hebrews, it was meant as a whole unit. And though we can take time and work on and digest, as it were, certain portions again and again, and looking at it should take it as a whole unit, the flow of it. And that's one part of the study too, to see the flow. So begin with verse 1 of chapter 5. We'll read 2 verses each, and we'll go around. And read 5 first. We'll do it, and then we'll go to chapter 6 later and read that. I'll start from verse 1. For every high priest taken from among men is ordained before men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. Who can have compassion on the ignorant and on them that are out of the way? For that he himself also is compassed with infirmity.
And by reason hereof he dies for the people, so also for himself to offer for sins. And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of God, and was Aaron. So also Christ glorified not himself to be made an high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today have I begotten thee. As he said also in another place, Thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek.
Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. Verse 9.
Oh. And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto them that obey him, called of God, a high priest after the order of Melchizedek.
Of whom we have many things to say, and hard to be uttered, seeing ye are dull of hearing. And when for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk, not of solid food.
For everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But strong meat belongs to them that are of full age, even to those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So let's look at that now, and from the analysis that was derived, this is the problem, you have to photocopy your sheets, because you're not going to be able to share in class.
The only thing is, if we use pencil,
You just
we can't see.
offset the scripture, at least get what you've written. Because you're gonna have to augment it or something. And maybe.
When did I go and quickly photocopy them?
No, it won't take much time. We'll just do it this way.
Why can't we just hold on to him until after class? Then I know.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But you don't want us to add on to his, just take notes, right?
Yeah, take notes. And Blair, you still have yours?
I didn't get finished.
Just take notes.
Like, don't amend, you're supposed to, that's one thing I want to have double copies. Anything we add on now, don't add on to what you've done.
Right.
Let's see what you've done. Okay, just looking at the grammatical. Now, we're not going to analyze it like we have in past days unless we have a problem, up to a problem or something. But where'd you find to be the breaks? The groupings. And then we're going to say why you think it's that way.
You mean what verses is there?
Yes. And we're looking for maybe major groupings, as it were, not every, because every point can be a break and as such, like when you're doing an outline. We want groupings, a train of thought.
I had it between 10 and 11, but it might be
Okay.
11 and 12.
Anybody else have that? Between those two verses? Okay, who didn't have that? Oh, I can see all. Okay, those who didn't do the grouping. Okay, that's what I had too. Now, what in there would say, why would you say it's that?
Because
Grammatically.
up until that point, grammatically.
Grammatically. That's what we're trying to show each point we're trying to show grammatically, this is what seems to be the structure, or grammatically this is what the main train of thought is. And sometimes it won't show anything. Like we'll see really in the chronologically, there's really nothing it gleans. But some of these other ones, and you can say, well, this is why I think there's a break here. Okay, Tracy?
Because verse 1 is the main idea, and then all the rest are subordinate to what is in verse 1.
Okay. Well, you said there's a break between 10 and 11. Why do you think there's a break then?
Because the topic changes in it.
Grammatically, why do you think?
That's why I think.
Okay. This one here, seeing. dull. Right? And seems to be changing because of everything seems to be subordinate as such. Now even this, when we look at it, for continuation. So really, it's not a main statement. I don't think. I believe it continues, and this is a problem by looking at just a small segment at a time. This is referring back. This is actually subordinate to the point before, whatever it was. So we're gonna just say that's subordinate, and now we're doing kind of logically here, just to show you why the grammatical fits in. Because then, if you see what it says, it talks about it, just the high priest taken. Actually, we'll go backwards a bit. We'll do it this way, and this way you'll see why a lot of just use the historical, grammatical approach to scriptures.
Just because a sentence is referring to a sentence before doesn't necessarily make it subordinate.
Makes it subordinate to the sentence before if it refers to it.
Because if that was the case, every other sentence after the sentence that started your book would be subordinate to that first sentence.
No, not really.
To a separate.
Not when you have a new therefore, a new purpose, or a new clause set out.
Is
Like
it-
each one progresses, but there's not each point is subordinate to another point. Some are brand new points, like a beginning of a new sentence, a new structure. But yeah, each one's connected. I mean, right from the beginning, or else you don't have a flow. Well, we'll just finish that. We'll go on. I'm changing my mind at time, but I want to come back to this. It's back here, ye are dull, right? And each one is subordinate to that. There's also, I believe, a break right here. Christ glorified not. Still got the logical. What's that? You can't see what?
The verse.
No, it's okay. I'm not straighten this. I'll move it back. I'll get to the next point. So this is where it comes. Anyone summarize the data at least? Off the side for logical. Anyone summarize the data for logical? Instead of looking for divisions, what did you just have in your summary? I mean, you're simplifying it. So you want to pull it out of there and just.
How did we do it? You know what you're asking?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think I did mine right. I put the conjunction and I explained what it is.
Okay. That's. Four.
That's an explanation.
I won't put that in, okay, that's an explanation.
And then I had,
An example.
and I had and and but too, but
Well, let's go through it then. Just to see, usually we do red square. 4, showing, giving an explanation or example. It's referring to something before this, probably the last verse, which was a therefore. And it seems a pattern so far as makes a concluding statement and explains it. But the segment we got, we're looking at the structure. 4, stating 4 min, but it's a subordinate one. Okay, so that I just put unders to show that. 4 min pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices. Just showing the train of thought. Each one is going back to the same point. Who still about this for every high priest is talking that first point. There's a day who can have compassion on the ignorant and on them that are out of the way. 4, that he himself is also compassed with infirmity. Now, do you see how why that's flowing like that? You see, for every high priest is taken from men is ordained. Okay, there's the main statement. He's ordained for men. This person here, thinking to God that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices. This is about what he was doing for men. He's offering sacrifices, gifts and sacrifices. Who, referring back to the high priest, have compassion on ignorant. Why? And on them out of the way. Why? For that he himself is compassed with infirmity. Talking about the who, going back to the for. And by reason hereof he ought, as for the people, so also for himself to offer for sins. And so who is compassion on ignorant and others, for the reason that he himself is compassed with infirmity, and ought, and for that reason, because he's compassed with infirmity, as for the people who are in the same state, so showing who's it so for himself, also to offer sin. And no man taketh this honor to himself, but he that is called of God. This comes all the way down here. This is still talking about the high priest now. And no man taketh this honor, being a high priest, unto himself, but ones who are called of God. So that's just like a general flow, a general idea. The high priest is taken among men, from among men, and ordained for men, to offer for men. This high priest who is got compassion on two types, a continuation, for he himself is compassed, and just by that reason, just as for the people, he should offer for sins. And this high priest doesn't take it upon himself, this honor, but he's called of God. And as, at the very end, gives an example, as was Aaron, a specific individual of this high priest starting of it. Now, this one here, and division. Just following along this the idea of all dealing with the high priest, as was like Aaron, the beginning of the high priest, so results so also Christ glorified not himself to be made a high priest, but so he didn't make himself high priest, but
Are we supposed to have all those red squares on there too?
You're supposed to already have done it.
yeah,
Weren't really red squares.
yeah, red squares for logical.
Oh.
But he that said unto him, so basically, so Christ didn't take it upon himself, and glorified not himself, but he was ordained so by God the Father. But he said unto him, thou art my son, I have begotten thee. As he said, yes, I have it. So, but he's made a son, as he saith in another place, just as he's made a high priest. As he saith also in another place, thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayer and supplication, see all these disconnectives, when he had offered up prayers and supplication with strong crying and tears unto him, that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared. Though he were a son, yet he learned obedience by the things he suffered. And being made perfect. Let's put there. Maybe who function. Just like up here, when we contrast it later, when we look at it contextual, you'll see the function's the same how he functioned, yet learned obedience and made perfect, called of God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. That's supposed to be down here, but
What's the word after God's end?
and become the author of eternal salvation. This next one I had about just many things. Many things. And try to find it. And hard. It's just like looks like a blob.
Yeah, that's why I can't see reading.
And hard to be uttered. Seeing. You're dull. When for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become as such a need of milk, and not of strong meat. 4. So you got 1-4 here. That many things to utter, but can't. 4. For need teach. Can't. Many things utter, but can't. For need teach. Also, the ends down here, and milk, and not strong meat. 4. Speaks for a babe. No, for everyone that uses milk is unskillful for the word of righteousness, for he's a babe. So many things to teach, and that are hard to say. We can't. Seeing, they're dull. 4, they need to be taught, and need milk, and not strong meat. Can't teach these things, for they are babes. The ones that's like this. But strong meat belongs to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use of their senses exercise discern both good and evil. Any comments?
My brain won't do that for me.
What's that?
My brain won't do that for me.
Actually, see, a lot of this stuff we do every day is just training ourselves to be conscious. We do a lot of it subconsciously. We just do it. We think logically. Like, you can tell when you think logically when you know there's something missing between a thought. Like a person says something and you have to assume what's missing. You just thought logically. We use this all the time. We're giving reasons for something. It's just now trying to think of it consciously, pick it up. So by this, I could say logically, the divisions are still the same. They're not proportional here on my page, but it seems between 4 and 5, 10 and 11. And this is why. This one seems to be talking about the high priest for these reasons. Each one's subordinate to this first statement. And this first statement is actually subordinate to something else. This statement before, you'd have to go look at it. This one, all these thoughts are subordinate to this statement. And these are subordinate to this. Explaining it, or drawing a similarity to it, or drawing a contrast to it, or just continuing the thought.
So is verse 5 the main statement?
That's what I have it as. So this is actually, right here is verse 5, and this is verse down here 11. So I have the same seeing the visions as my grammatical. And I didn't have my grammatical. I had like here, ye are dull, was a statement. Ye have need was a statement. Christ glorified it, not himself. This one I didn't have a main statement. Like, I mean, you could have where the priest is taken, ordained, but it still goes back to consider, I believe. Let us therefore come boldly under the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need for every high priest taken from among men. And he's going to draw all the way back. This point then actually points back to that last concluding statement. That's why in verse 4:16, let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. For these high priests. So also Christ was a high priest, but he's got a better priesthood. He didn't have to offer his own sins. He gave eternal salvation. But then he comes to, but like many things. I'd have more to say about this. But all these points, I can't go on. You're like, babes, you gotta be taught again, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. So that's what I mean, that's what you're to do when you go through this analysis part. This is the first stage. Just picking out of this sea of words, a certain aspect, transferring over to your column, not every word, but the general thought. You want to simplify it, then you just want to group it. And then you'll see, when you look at it, well, this shows that this is a train of thought, this is a train of thought, and this is a train of thought. Logical is important. Seems the hardest ones are most important. It always works that way. Logical is important. In fact, this is most of the time how you can make your outline. It's just by the way the train of thought goes from these words. You know, this is number one, this is A, B, this is A, B, and C, and this is 1 in brackets, 2 in brackets, and this is because it's underneath that. Your grammatical one is important because you get to see what is the main like verb, what's the main action that's going on, and the subject and the object. And it gives you the visions of the train of thought. Okay. Let's do another one. You're not going to be able to look at. I'll have to flip it back and forth. Let's do move on, historical bit. I'm finding historical, even though you can, it gives you points. There's not really too much that it gives you that really helps you as such, other than looking for information later on, background that we need. And that's another part of exegesis for later on. There's a lot of things that we're separated from, culturally, time-wise, and in our understanding. And so there's things we have to look up to know what the author meant, or how they would take it, the people back then. Let's look at it biographically. We'll do an easy one. What were your observations? Simplified.
Most of the first part is talking about Christ.
Okay. Well, let's do it like this. Let's just simplify it verse by verse. That's kind of how we want. We'll do that at first. And let's see. First verse.
Priest and men, God.
Okay. And high priest, 4 men, just below arrow, to God. Okay. Verse 2. Okay. Well, the high priest again. And the ignorant. Okay. Which is all describing the type of men.
You said verse 2 is with the high priest again?
Yeah, still dealing with because of the who. So the who is referring back to high priest. For every high priest, men, okay, who can have compassion? The high priest. Okay, verse 3.
High priest, he.
Okay. And what's the anything else? Okay. High priest. People. And himself. And we also have Up here was just out of the way. Just showing a similar form. Okay. Verse 4.
Man and God and Aaron.
Okay. Now, you gotta think a bit when it's not just talking about just any man, right? What's it talking about? This no man.
Priest, Aaron was a priest. The man or Aaron?
The statement, no man takes this honor unto himself.
We're talking about a high priest.
Okay. Just, it'd be the position or the function of the high priest. Okay, this idea is talking about the position or the function of the high priest. But he is called of God. And just an example, Aaron, as Aaron. You're not specifically talking about Aaron as such and going through just Aaron's life or his thing, but as Aaron, give an example, who was the first, and he's doing that for a reason, but who is the first, doesn't take it to himself, God chooses him. Okay? Verse 5.
Christ the Son is the priest. Oh God. Like,
Okay.
priest, Son of God.
Well, let's see. Christ.
Made.
Now, there's something else in here. There's a personality down in here. Again, and it's something that came through. Christ what?
Himself.
Okay, himself what? Anybody? Okay. Christ glorified him and not himself to be made a high priest.
Right.
So Christ, in the idea of being a high priest, didn't do himself. Remember just the verse before, and no man takes this honor to himself, being a high priest. Christ also, remember, showing a similarity, Christ also glorified him, not himself to be made a high priest. He didn't make himself a high priest, right? But he said unto him, who's the he?
God.
Right? The Father, but we'll put God. God chose him, just like God chose the high priest or Aaron. Right? And he chose him by saying, first off, that because he made him a son, right? He chose him, you're a son, and verse 5 or 6, sorry.
Melchizedek.
God and priest.
Yeah, priest again. Personality now. So we have Christ as high priest, like Melchizedek. So these high priests were like Aaron. Christ is like Melchizedek, right? Now, verse 7.
Is that who we're referring to, Melchizedek? Or Christ?
Good question. I assumed it was. Oh yeah, it'll tell you verse 8 who it is. It's
Oh, okay, got it.
though he were a son. Okay. Because that's all one sentence, right down to right from here, from the who down to verse 10 is one sentence. So who in the days of flesh? What's he talking about? Who?
Son.
Just Christ again. And able to fear them. Again, we'll go through it, but he's comparing offered up, and up here was offered up. It's his high priestly ministry compared to man's high priestly ministry, the Aaronic line. Okay? But again, the main biography is Christ. And verse 8. Though a son, okay, it's still talking about Christ, right? And though a son, he still learned obedience, right? Still, the idea, though he was a son, or son, he's still talking about in the context of being a high priest. Verse 9. Who's talking about? Just the main person?
This one.
Okay. The idea is he as a high priest, eternal salvation, right? The author. Another
Oh wait, what did you say in verse 8? You said that was still talking about the high priest?
In the context, though he were a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered.
I think you're analyzing.
But when it
I
goes
think you're going beyond what we should be doing here. When you assuming about the high priest then.
Who's he then?
No, I don't.
He were a son.
You'll see, because the other ones, it's you got to go into context. It's talking about it being a high priest, and in contrast, the other high priests, and it's though he were a son, in his position.
About the obedience though, that doesn't really mean high priest. I mean, it could just be applied to the sonship part of it.
I can't see
I
that.
think you read too much into, like, for what we're doing here. Like, yeah, I know he's the high priest, but the obedience part I don't think
Oh,
is
no, I didn't-
applicable, like, because that's how you've got it, son, a high priest.
Yeah, this Christ, who's the son, is still a high priest.
Yeah, but it's
Though he were a son, like we're talking in context, he's a high priest, and though he were a son, yet he learned obedience.
okay, whatever.
I'm not saying anything about what he learned about the obedience. I'm just saying though he were a son.
Oh, I thought you heard about high priest.
Okay, in verse 10. Right. Called of God, a high priest after the order. So again, Christ, high priest, after the order of Melchizedek, right? And again, he's called of God. Just like it was up here, high priest called of God. Ironic. High priest, Christ, he identifies him. High priest, like Melchizedek, called of God. Now, do you see a division anywhere in here? Can you group similar things? Right. Right here. Right? He's talking about kind of after the Aaronic high priest. High priest for men unto God. High priest for the ignorant and out of the way. High priest for the people. High priest called of God. Christ, a high priest, not to himself, but because of glorified by God. Christ, the high priest, after the Melchizedek, talks about who in the days, talking about Christ, even though a son. Christ, eternal salvation. Christ, a high priest, after Melchizedek priesthood, called of God. Now who's the biography of verse 11? We and ye. And if we were to go down, so we see it changes. So, biographically, if you look at this portion of scripture, you look at it, you identify it, you simplify it, and then you group, you see that there's a change of thought biographically from verses 4 and 5 and verses 10 and 11. So it progresses. There's a thought in verses 1 to 4, verses 5 to 10 there's a thought, and verses 11 to 14.
The reason why I didn't break it between 4 and 5 is because I just grouped it all together. Because it's all talking
And
about
actually,
priest.
yeah, you could do that too. Biographically, I think talking about Christ and this talking about high priest, looking at it topically, dealing with the high priest, like, or the priesthood, then this would be all one thought. But biographically, it's two different people, like two different things you're talking. You're not talking about Christ in the first 5 verses, not even mentioned, or 4 verses. So this is what I want done on your papers. This kind of thing. You go through, you analyze, like biographically, you circle all the stuff you're supposed to circle. Like it talks about individuals, personalities, but you don't write everything out onto your column. All you write over is just kind of group. Do it verse by verse, if you have to. Just summarize. What's the emphasis? What's the most important individual or whatever, or most emphasized individual in that verse? And then look at all the verses after you simplify that and say, okay, can I group any of these? And here we see this from 5 to 10 talks about Christ. From 1 to 4 talks about every high priest, is a general thing. Specifically these men who are like Aaron, but high priests. This time about Christ. Now they're all going to talk about this whole portion. It's going to be talking about the priesthood, the high priesthood. But that's how you would divide it. And this one is talking about we and us, we and ye when he's exhorting. So if you were to outline this, and which the next step is to do, because you want to, on your summary side, you finally say, again, this is not enough just to have all these different analysis and say, okay, this is a break, this is a break, this is a break. We want to then just simplify all those into, okay, what are the major divisions of this portion? Even though some aren't in total agreement, what seem to be the major one, the most emphasized. And so if we were to summarize, we'll say, okay, verses 1 to 4, or even we could say verses 1 to 8 if we were to do a larger grouping. This is going to be a high priesthood. Verses 1 to 4, 1 to 10. Verses 1 to 4 deal with the earthly priesthood. We'll call it that. Just whatever it uses, just deal with the earthly priesthood. Verses 5 to 10, the superiority of Christ's priesthood. Verse 11 to 14, this talks about how they aren't able to, an exhortation to them. They aren't able to receive anymore. And so that way, now we haven't really gone through and saying the whole theme of the whole book and reword it to this. We're just trying to group it. And that's what you do. Then you see this is what the train of thought in the outline is. Any questions? Now, no, I wish I had the camera. I could show everyone's face here. Don't be discouraged with this. The idea is always try not to get bogged down. The whole point is trying to simplify. You start off by looking at a lot of specific things. You take that and you group it. You take those little groups, you group it again. And you keep trying to simplify it but you want to be true to what the text says. We do it subconsciously. We'll read through a passage, we'll say this kind of goes together. Maybe because we're looking at one aspect, or this is an illustration, so that's a group. And it's true. But how does it tie in? Or is that the only point, or is that the break? Okay, let's try another one. We'll look at chapter. I want to just rub off the grammatical. There wasn't too much there. I'm going to try to see if there's any more I've done. There's two more here that really, looking at it topically. Topically, what would be the general topic of verses 1 to 4?
Priest.
Okay. Well, not just any priest. We'll use the modifier here, the high priest.
High priest is ordained priest.
No, the high priest is like the Grand Poobah. I mean, there was one, there's only one that went inside the holiest of all, the Holy of Holies. Just one, the high priest. But there was other priests. And there was the Levitical priesthood, and some of them didn't even do the sacrifices. All they were to do was to break down the tents and carry them and stuff. So there's different functions.
Well, I thought it was the high priest that would do it once a year.
Right.
There was more than one high priest then. Because they would rotate. It wasn't the same person
right.
every year.
Like in the time of Aaron, there was him and his 4 sons.
But he was in the high priest.
Yeah, but there's only one functioning at a time. You're not going to have 2 in the same place. So anyways, the high priest, what's verses 5 to 10? What's the topic? Okay. Okay.
It reveals the high priest's identity.
Right. Actually, we're going to see that's what the topic's about. the high priesthood. And so these are all grouped together, because what it's going to do when we look at it contextually and we compare, make a comparison, you can make a little chart of this, you're seeing that that's what he's doing. Instead of doing it side by side through the verses, like he did with Moses, he's discussing this one first, then looking at Christ. And then what's the topic in verses 11 to 14?
I put down teach.
Okay.
I had the word and teaching.
Right. Actually, it's the topic seems a little bit more broader, like that.
Like I had teach, and then I had under that like subdivisions of milks for babe and strong meats for the aged.
Yeah. Basically, I had just analyzing without going through is like words that seem of a similar topic, where he had things to say, or when he uttered, gives the same idea, but the reception of it. The first part, like what he did, like the teaching or the uttering or the saying, but dull of hearing. You should be a teacher, but you need to be taught. The first principles and the oracles, the word of righteousness, and to discern. And so the idea is focusing on the word or the message itself, on the reception of it. So we see it's topically, this is distinct. Does it looks like this do it?
Word.
Yeah, word and say.
And sneak.
Go with you.
See if we can get you some better markers for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I guess she said she had some.
What is
Oh,
the
yeah.
second
Fine
word?
tip on
Word.
Word of
Word.
dull of hearing.
No, the other one. Word.
Oh, and then say.
Okay.
It gives it.
Shy.
Since sometimes the topic doesn't necessarily, like they're talking about the word. It's not always going to say the word. It may talk about the scriptures, or it may talk about the doctrine, which is contained in the word. Things dealing with the word. So sometimes you get multiple emphasis, but it's trying to show progression. Like some of the other chapters, we'll go back over them, and that's what it does. And let's look at it just textually. And I want to see if we can summarize it. It's kind of hard if we haven't done all our observations, but let's see if we can. We got the general breaks. And that was one of the points, to see where the breaks are and where they're in agreement. Right? The major breaks. And so far we got it where it's verses 1 to 4. Like a major one is 1 to 10, and even that goes larger, but we're just going to do the small segments, 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 14, for what we have. But before we do, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. No, I'm not going to do this, be able to do this in the I'm going to go to the board. Can you turn the lights on, please, Scott? So got it, up here. Now, the first main topic dealt with what? Verses 1 to 10.
High priest.
Okay. So we're looking for comparisons. We'll do this one. Who are the two people, or two things compared?
Aaron and Melchizedek. Aaron? Oh yeah.
Aaronic, high priesthood, and Melchizedek. Christ.
Christ.
Yeah, Christ. Yeah. We're specifically looking at the person of Christ. This one, just generic high priest. So we're looking at a specific person. Okay, looking in your portion of Scripture, what are some things that you found, or can find even by looking at it now, that it mentions, say, about the Aaronic one first, because that's what it mentions. What are some terms you see there?
Taken, ordained.
Okay, so taken of men. Ordained for men. Another one?
Offer. Oh, okay. Offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. Offer for sins.
Gifts. Sacs.
Have compassion.
What's that? Yeah, okay. Different types. We just want to keep it simple. Other things?
Compassion.
Okay, that's-
for Christ.
Yeah. What's that?
Where are we working? Where are we?
Yeah, we're still in the ironic. Just continue
No,
with
no,
the
no.
verse.
2. Okay. Compassion and infirmity.
Okay. The idea is with
Well, it's going to
compassion,
come again in
have
the
compassion,
obedience.
and is with infirmity, showing it's not perfect.
Is our out of the way?
Sweet. Infirmity. What was another thing we have here?
Our out of the way.
What?
Is our out of the way?
No, that's up here. It's modifying on who you can have compassion on it. We're just looking at the point you would gather, say if it was Aaron you're looking at, we're looking at his kind of priesthood. If you're looking at Aaron, he's taken from men, he's ordained for men, he offers gifts and sacrifices, he can have compassion, he's with infirmity. What's that?
Saw it. There's Esau. Equal.
And there's one up here ahead, in things to God. Just in things, what he does. Another one? There's just a couple more.
Offers for
Yeah.
himself and for people.
Offers for sin, people, but most importantly, self. The guy's a sinner. Next. There's 2 more.
Takes no honor.
Okay. Not take honor. That doesn't mean he doesn't accept praise or something like that.
But he didn't make himself back.
Right.
And then call.
He didn't do it himself. He said, I'm going to be a high priest. He's not like a Diotrephes of high priests here. He doesn't take it upon himself. Why?
He's called to God.
Called. Okay, that's quite a list.
Gee, I didn't even get this.
Okay. Now, I can't even say
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek.
No, Ian. Melchizedekian, that's what I want to say. Line. With Christ, we're looking more at the person now. What's a point about him?
Doesn't say too much about Melchizedek in the Bible at all.
He
Okay.
offered up
Angels.
prayers and supplications.
I wouldn't go down that far yet.
Yeah,
I know.
there's just one other thing, but we want to, and then you want to kind of match it up, even though it's maybe not in order. You want to match it up. So here he offered gifts and that. Here he offers prayers and supplication. Gifts and sacrifices, prayer and supplication.
See, he's appointed by God. Like he's picked.
Okay.
Right? He was made. I don't know.
I wrote too small.
So at the end too. Anything else? Where's he come from?
That's not the one I was thinking
It answers it in, I believe, the first verse of it.
Honored of God. Where it says, Christ glorified not himself. To which goes at the bottom.
Glorified not himself. Did not take on. He did the same thing, showing he didn't do it. He was going to do something. What else is there?
Called with man too.
Right. He's also called. Something else?
Seeks people.
Where do you have that? Oh, okay, you're just generalizing?
Well, another one verse now. That's just.
Okay. How about he suffered?
Okay.
The Aaronic priest had infirmity. Christ suffered.
I put it over here though. The other priest offered for sins. He suffered for sins. Over here, whether it's either one, I put it with this one. He learned obedience. He's with infirmity. He didn't have any infirmity, but he learned obedience. And one other one, or two other ones. One is up here. This one's taken of men, being for men and such, but seems to be stated here too is Son of God. One other one I had. There's many you could probably do that aren't even there, or maybe implied or whatever, but one other one I had, which was interesting. It was heard.
Who's Melchizedek?
He was when, and this is the other part with the historical. When you go through, that's exactly what you ask. Who is Melchizedek? Historically, when it talks about he met Abraham, well, then that's when later you put that down in your section. You see, you're going to have to research it if you're going to understand the passage correctly. And that's another reason for doing the thing. You see certain portions you're going to have to understand or cross-relate back into it.
Yeah, he's pretty hard to figure out. I've tried to talk to people about him and that, and they had a hard time.
What's that fancy word, Blair, when Christ comes?
Theophany?
Yeah, but you don't think that that's what Melchizedek was? If we're looking at an historical thing, because otherwise there is no explanation for Melchizedek.
Well, actually,
Other than-
he played a big role, though.
That's where the part of interpretation comes, and that's when you look back at it. You know, what did it mean? And then you can actually look at the historical event. Was it a theophany of Christ or Christophany? And or was it a physical person God just used as an example, right? He's an example, and that's what he used to portray that priesthood. So that's it wrong. Right now we want to just see. So that's contextually. That's what you would do. These are the comparisons, contrasts, similarities, and you'll see that goes right down. Again, that contains verses 1 to 10. That's basically what he's doing. You're kind of visualizing it. This is also like our example of our correlation, but this is what he's saying in words. He's trying to compare and relate in words to show what? This one's better. You know, this one offered for sin, he suffered. You know, they both glorified, they're both called, there's a similarity. He was heard. And they never knew. They always went fear and trembling inside the holy place. We're going to see later on. He had no problem. The Son of God offers prayers. This is where it all comes back to. Remember that verse I read in verse 16 of chapter 4? Therefore, let's come boldly into the throne of grace. Well, he offers up prayers. He is this high priest, and he's trying to show, well, we're interpreting, but there's a reason for the contrast. But this is, when we look at it, this is what we see. That's contextually.
Why are we allowed to interpret?
No, you are.
Just
But
because it's not part
you're
of
gonna
the
get-
course?
Yes, of course, Scott. No. But we're trying to do a section at a time and learn how to do the first section right. And the most important section, to see what it says, because you start interpreting even before you get done and arguing who Melchizedek is and who he isn't, you miss the point of what the text says and some of the points it says and the progression of thought, which is the most important thing. Okay. Now let's see if we can try it for a summary, and we'll take a break. For a summary, and we'll do it up here. We had verses. We saw that verses 1 to 10 dealt with the high priest. Within that, verses 1 to 4 dealt with the Aaronic high priesthood. Verses 5 to 10 dealt with the Melchizedekian priesthood. Verses 11 to 14 from the segment we had. We don't know. This seems to be a continuation at a certain point. Okay, there's more to it. But what we're looking at, the segment we're looking at, what did it do at verses 11 to 14? Okay, teaching, they can't receive anymore. Right? We don't want to totally generalize. You can't even use the words he used. Okay, we can just put down. This is what we want to do. We don't want to go through and say, okay, this is everything, because we don't know the whole train of thought yet of the book or his main point or everything. But we can just put down exactly what's there in Scripture. Or that kind of idea. You're dull of hearing, you're babes. You can't go on. He wants to tell them more about this, and you just can't go on because they're still struggling with something else. That's basically it. Because, and we could say, as this outline, verses 1 to 10 we know are there because of the topic. Verses 1 to 4 we know that because it's the Aaronic in brackets is the priest, just every high priest. But 1 to 4 is because of the biography was there. Verses 5 to 10 was the biography. We're dealing with Christ. So we can just expand on that a bit.
Is this Peter saying all this, like to the Christians or something?
That's the thing we're going to look at, who the author is. It didn't state it so far.
No, but
Now, so we got this because we can say because of biographically. We also had this division grammatically. It showed because it and logically, you know, 4 and then each point pointed back and kept these a little bit as a whole, right? So that would be in your summary side. Later, when we go back through, we finally say, okay, this was for the whole book. This is the main emphasis. If there was one thing that the author wanted to get across, this was it. And then you go back through and you say, well, how can you relate that theme? That's called, you get the theme and then you restate it. But we've got the divisions. These are the divisions. They're not going to be any. These divisions aren't going to change as such unless we just looked at it one way. But looking at it with these different ways, they all kind of group together to be these divisions. Then later on when we go through it, or you go through it, then you can actually go down in here, well, verse 1 is this, or 1a, 1b, and each one breaks down. You can go a lot more detailed. We're just trying to simplify it. Any questions? we'll take a break then. We'll come back and we'll look at chapter 6. Context of it, we should read through it. We'll read 2 verses at a time. And we'll go through we'll just read the verse 16, so that's all we're going to deal with today. Therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on unto perfection, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God, of the doctrine of baptisms, and of laying on of hands, and of resurrection of the dead, and of eternal judgment. And this we will do if God permit. For it is impossible for those who were once enlightened and have tasted of the heavenly gift, or made partakers of the Holy Spirit. Verse 5. Verse 5.
Verse 5.
Chapter 6.
And have tasted the good word of God and the powers of the age to come. If they shall fall away, to renew them again unto repentance, seeing they crucify to themselves the Son of God afresh, and put him in an open shame.
For the earth which drinketh in the rain that cometh oft upon it, and bringeth forth herbs meet for them by whom it is dressed, receiveth blessing from God. But that which beareth thorns and briars is rejected, and nigh unto cursing, whose end is to be burned.
But, beloved, we are persuaded better things of you, and things that accompany salvation, though we thus speak. For God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which ye have showed toward his name, and that ye have ministered to the saints, and do minister.
And we desire that every one of you do show the same diligence to the full assurance of hope unto the end, that ye be not slothful, but followers of them who, through faith and patience, inherit the promises.
For when God made promise to Abraham, because he would swear by no greater, he swore by himself, saying, Surely blessing I will bless thee, and multiplying I will multiply thee.
And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife.
Where
Well, in there, because that's where all we're going to cover right now. Now again, just turn to our analysis of chapter 6, down to verse 16. Did anyone find, can you, what's that, please? What was, if you were to say the grammatical one, did anyone have any divisions? Okay, did anyone find what was the main subject, verb, object? Well, what I had was in verse 1 is let us go on into perfection. So let us go. And all the rest seem to be subordinate. Right down to here where there's a break in thought. First off, where it starts off, it is impossible. Now we're going to see later on that this has been modified. There's a break in thought there for this full section. And it goes right down to 10. This is show same desire. let's see. Let's look at it another way here. Okay, biographically. Does anyone have a general group biographically? Okay. Well, just quickly going through it. Who? Verse 1. Tracy, do you see who may be the main?
Us.
Okay. Fine. Us. Verse 2.
Still us.
Okay. Verse 3.
We will.
Okay. Verse 4. Okay, so we've seen another break. Continuing down to okay, doing verse 5. What's that?
No,
Okay.
it's the same people.
Yeah, same people. Verse 6. Verse 7.
Okay, that's an explanation.
Okay, but
Where-
biographically, who's it talking about?
Well,
The earth. That's the subject.
okay.
Earth. So we get a break. Verse 8.
Still the earth.
The earth. It's a different type, but it's still referring to the earth. Verse 9.
You. We're persuaded of better things of you.
Okay. What's the main subject? We. So we see a break there. Verse 10. It's we of you. Like if I had room here, I'd put it into. It's the we and you. Okay. What about God? Who else?
You. Your word.
Yeah. Your. It's like the we and you, and then your, and what God is involved with it. Verse 11. Right. You of them, or ye of them. Ye be not slothful, but ye be followers of them. Right. That's simplifying it. 13.
God.
Okay. God and Abe. It's a break.
And then back to God.
Right. Still God. 15.
It's
Abe.
God.
No, he obtained the promises, God, Abraham. 16.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, you just 14.
Yeah, that's. I was looking at 14. I will bless you.
Who's 16 talking about? Just men. Generic type term, men. And okay, looking at it topically. We're going to really simplify it. Sometimes simplifying it too, if you have a lot of similar terms, you got to kind of figure what they're all referring to as such. Just try verse 1. Okay, doctrine.
I think it's a continuation of the last one. I don't think it's been completed from the last verse.
Right. But we're just doing this segment. You can do a segment at a time. So doctrine. Okay. Verse 2.
Same.
Doctrine. Verse 3.
Same.
Kind of goes on which says, let us go on. Okay, but that's fine, so it's the same. Now, verse 4. Summarize that.
Oh, that's got to do with the Buddha people. The enlightened ones.
Well, I'm going to venture out, and we'll be dealing with this later probably. We'll say this is salvation, right? Who were enlightened, having the gift, partakers of the Holy Spirit. Verse 5.
Continuation.
Verse 6. Now you're going to see there's a lot of different schools of thought on this, but I think you're reading. I don't. We'll look at it later. Verse 7. What does it deal with? Okay. What about it? The topic of it? No, we're not looking at it textually, we're looking at it topically. Growth or the idea of bringing forth. Okay, we're looking at the earth, but we're looking at the topic is we're going to see is the fruit. We're going to see that ties in. That's just I'm summarizing that. You could put the exact word bringing forth. Okay, it's probably better, but I'm just got a short room here. Verse 8. Same contrast, right? Type of fruit. One, it's like the herbs, and the other is the thorns and stuff. Verse 9.
Salvation.
Well, I think it could be talking about the same thing, but he's comparing it by using contrast.
Right. Because it says it is dealing with salvation, right? But it's going to be dealing with we're persuaded better things of you and things that accompany salvation. These things accompany what's more of the earth, the fruit, things that accompany salvation. And now fruit and salvation are put together. Verse 10.
Fruit kind of sort of.
Yeah. Now we're really generalizing here, but you would probably be better to put down like persuaded of things of salvation and work and labor and use the actual words, right? Fruit. You won't forget your work and labor, right? And ministry. Verse 11. What's that? But I think the topic's changed.
Hope.
Okay, what's the relation to the hope?
Diligence.
Yeah. In a sense, it's changed. Even this is partially changed. I'll put a small one here, still going right across. It's a small division, right? Up here was an example, down here was trying to relate it. Here, it's continuation of the exhortation. It's going to talk about diligence. 12.
Same.
Basically, be not slothful, right? Topically, talking about diligence, and then putting to the promise. You also get the same word up there with hope, the promise, the hope. the end. And then what's verse 13? What's the main thing?
God's word.
Okay, or promise. Relating more to the promise. I'm going to give an example of Abraham. So we got a small break here. Verse 14. Promise. 15. Promise. 16. It deals with that, but it's a roundabout way. We'd have to look at it later. But for men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them, these men, an end of all strife. When they give an oath, that's it. It's settled. I'm trying to show God gave an oath. It's His promise. It's settled. But it's referring back.
Well, I would just put then promise settled.
Yeah. So, topically, then we did biographically, topically, grammatically. Yeah, it didn't yield too much though. Just one section when I talk about Earth, it's general ground, planet. Chronological, I gave a bit. You do that one.
I don't like this passage for chronological. Because it's...
But even if there's a lot of time changes, you try to see what's the main emphasis of the time.
But some of them are hard to figure out because like it's talking present but it's meaning past.
Yeah.
And I was confused.
Okay. The first verse. We'll just do, rather than looking for time signatures in here, right? We're just going to look at the verb tenses. Just do it really brief to show you something, okay? Right. Present. Verse 2. Verse 3.
Future.
Actually past.
This will be.
Yeah, but this will we do if God permit. And if is kind of like if. Okay, so future. Not like this we are doing. This we will do. Anyways, verse 4.
Past.
Present.
It's past.
Present past.
I put it at, because you think of the verb is and that, but it is referring to this example that's coming.
Right.
Okay. But for those who were is the main thing. We're going to see were. So past. Verse 5. Past. Verse 6.
Future.
Verse 7.
Present.
It's hard to tell actually.
So yeah, this is a funny one too. I had it like past and present, meaning drawing upon a past thing. Well, this isn't happening right there. You don't see all the stages of development right there. Drawing a past example is giving a present truth. Okay, perfect. Yeah, too perfect. There we go. Okay, verse 8. Kind of the same thing, right? Drawing from the past, but giving truth to the present. Verse 9.
Well, actually, verse 8 is also got a future tense whose end is to be burned.
Okay. Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. That helps. Okay. 9.
Present.
So we get a little bit of vision here because it's just. Let's see. 10. Just cut it.
And few past. God is not unrighteous, but you showed.
I put the main emphasis in the past, dealing with all their works, the present thing, he won't forget. The main thing is the past, what they did in the past, and then even in the present, they do minister. Actually, they're still doing it in the present too. Verse 11. I basically had future. You know, they're saying it now, you know, in the present. But
That's what I hate about them, because you don't know which ones.
you want the main emphasis, even though he's saying it, the main emphasis, he wants this future thing to happen.
I had that too.
Yeah. Future. So that's why I divided it there.
Yeah. He's not talking about something to come later. He's talking about it right now. That's just like if I asked you to go down, I want you to go get me a glass of water. You're gonna say that's future? No, I'm asking you to do that now.
Yeah, but I won't fulfill it till the future.
No, but I'm
You're
still
not,
asking
future
you.
doesn't have to mean like 6 billion years away.
You're not getting it.
Like, it's not a
wrong
present
now.
state of being for these people. He wants something to be in a certain state, and it's not right now. But he wants them to be that way. But he's asking now to be that way. Let's go on.
Yeah.
Verse 12.
Present.
It's the same as the one before.
Yeah, it connects to the one before. They want to be like this, but they want to be in the present like this.
Oh.
They're asking him to do something in the future that they want him to be. To be verbs, sorry. They want him in a certain state.
The other one was present future, and that one's future present.
Yeah. Okay, and then
Future
verse
too.
13. Yeah, I put his future. Verse 13.
Past.
Okay, so I put
Definitely not.
a division there. 14,
Past.
15,
Past.
16, just again, probably past true things from observation that hold
Is the
true.
last one past?
No, it is. It's in the context of past. Things through observation can only be done in the past, but the truth holds right now to the present. Just looking at past. So you can see you had more divisions that way. Now, these means you can break down your outline smaller. These divisions are there, but we want to see later what are the major divisions, right? And something else I want to do that's a little bit different, and we're going to summarize this. I want to do textual. And I saw even by your examples, I think maybe we'll try to do this because some of the terms we had, just as didactic or just narrative, aren't enough. That's not really going to help us. So just add to those things like saying what form it is or how it's used in a sense. We'll do that too. Being, as we'll see here, so if it's an illustration, put an illustration. It could be a didactic illustration, whatever, but just, you know, it helps to identify a little bit more, give a little more training of thought. So the first verse, what would you say that is?
What is he doing?
Textual.
Future.
Okay. Verse 2.
If you're gonna break it down more, you might want to make another division. That would be probably commands or something. Commands, like doctrine, like commands are probably in doctrine, but you might want to make that a separate one, or put it in a little footnote or something.
Okay.
And then let us. That's pretty important.
We'll do that. Verse 2.
Continues.
Continue.
Verse 3.
It's the same, isn't it? Or is it become harmony or
Okay. 4.
Just teaching.
I think it's even better. What's 4 show? Word 4 gives an explanation or an example. So we'll just use
Commands.
an example. Verse 5. This is obvious. 6. Now, verse 7 is, again, we can call it example, illustration, illustration. Verse 8.
It's sort of not commanding, but it's exhorting, encouraging, or something. I don't know. Wait a minute. Wait, verse what?
Verse 8.
Oh, verse 8.
Verse 9, sorry.
Yeah, verse 9.
Okay, I had exhortation. Verse 10. Okay, I kind of continued it on. Like it's giving the example. It's in the context of the exhortation. Verse 12. Verse 13. What's 4 showing again? And using our logical to see our textual.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Explanation.
A what?
No, who's showing the example?
4 in verse 13.
Oh, sorry.
So, this is an example. And this, within the example is a narrative, right? Or a quotation. Still part of the example. And verse 16. Go back and just teaching truth. So, from that we can see again this, if you look at it a certain way,
I tried to look at it.
yeah,
What's D for? Didactic.
see that?
Okay.
And yet it's still part of the example, like it's subordinate to it, it's a supplement. Right? It's not a whole new teaching, it's all subordinate to it, it's trying to explain the reason for it and give a conclusion for it, but now looking at all that, and bring this over, let's see, let's leave it there. Summary. What are some divisions that we see because of the approaches we made? Verse numbers. 1 to 3. I should draw this over. Let's see. Connecting up, I want to do it. So, 3. It's another one. This is sometimes
4 to 6.
4 to 6. Another one.
7 and 8. 9 and 10. 11 and 12. 13 and 14 and
16. Because here, this is it's not divided too much. It's all related to that. Now, just in a summary, what is what's 1 to 3? What's a little name we can give it? Give me a good grammatical. Okay, so let us go on. Four to six. See, you go right through, right across. You see an example of salvation, or it is impossible. When you say example, it is impossible. Seven and eight. Illustration of fruit. And the results and all that. We can reword this. We're just trying to get the main core thoughts. 9 to 10. Or should we divide it? Should it be 9 or 9 to 12? Let's do the 9 to 10 first. Is there a little thought that we can have there?
More fruit? I don't know.
We, you, fruit, salvation.
Past execution.
So, I don't know if that's right. This is not the final thing as such. The divisions are there. Renaming it, we'll redo again. Exhortation of fruit. Okay. 11 and 12.
Exhortation.
Okay, exhortation of
Us? I
diligence. This is future, right? Exhortation to diligence. 13, and right down to 16.
Promise.
See, we're going on actions. Example, to patience. Okay. Now you can rechange these. What's the main thing is we get the divisions. Renaming it, we're going to do later when we get the theme and everything, and start going through it. Because you're going to find when you go through the first time, you'll get an outline. As you keep going back to the text and seeing what the purpose is and what the theme is, you'll rechange it. You may even change some of your divisions or your some of them. But that's fine. We want to simplify it. Now, can we group any of these that we have here?
The two fruits can go together.
Okay.
From 7 till 10.
Okay. Even we can just go like this. Yeah, this one here. One here. Okay, we'll do that.
What?
What's that?
What did you write?
Well, if we group them, it has to be by fruits. Should we group that by that or group by progression? Like in a sense, either group it by the fruits here or group it by the exhortation. Like another way to look at it is you can say verse 1 to 3 is like the command, right? 4 to 6, an example. 7 to 8 is an illustration. 9 to 12 is the exhortation. 13 to 16 is an example.